I'm Jason Sylvia, and this is the Creative Capital Show. A show about creative people and how those creative people turn into entrepreneurs by taking their creativity and turning it into a business and facing all the trials and tribulations along the way. What would happen if a coffee company decided to take a risk and conduct an experiment? The experiment? Open a space combining the worlds of coffee, spirits, and cocktails, and see if the space can satisfy audiences of all three, while creating a new audience of its own. If you're wondering what kind of coffee company would do such a thing, and what kind of person would manage such a space, well, that coffee company would be New Harvest, and that person would be this episode's guest, Ryan Zins. Ryan has years of experience as both a barista and a bartender. This, combined with his work ethic, would make him the perfect person to manage a cafe and cocktail bar. But the story here goes beyond mixing drinks, pulling espresso shots, and managing people. It's a story about ambition, about having conviction in your ideas, the willingness to experiment and take risks. This is the story of New Harvest Coffee and Spirits. Enjoy.
I'm doing all right, man. I mean, happy to be here. It's my day off, but you dragged me in here, so.
Oh, now I feel awful.
No, the boss was like, I'm tired of seeing you. Get out of here for a minute. So I picked the most gorgeous day possible, and I'm like, all right, I'm not going to be here.
There you go. And then I dragged you back in here. When you're out, they just drag you back in.
They do. They do.
For anybody who's listening, Ryan, we're in a very beautiful space. Where are we, and what is it that you do here?
So we are in, I guess for all intents and purposes, we are in the Farm Fresh Food Hub. If anyone's not familiar with Farm Fresh, they're a great kind of farmer collaborative that kind of combines all the farms in Rhode Island, kind of brings them together and kind of disperses those gorgeous ingredients around the state, especially to low-income families, which is huge. So they created this giant building off Sims Avenue, the Valley, as they call it nowadays. We like to have our own hip name, like the big cities out there, although Providence is never going to get there. But, we like to call ourselves the Valley.
I don't know if I want Providence to get there. Like, I want the nicknames because that's fun, but yeah. I don't know if I want it to get there because rents are already skyrocketing. I don't want them to skyrocket anymore.
Right. So, at the corner of Sims and, Kinsley Avenue, we are the Farm Fresh Food Hub. But what my company does, I am New Harvest Coffee and Spirits. So, we are the flagship cafe that is abutted right next to the world-renowned, well, I say world-renowned, but, the New England-renowned coffee provider, New Harvest Coffee Roasters. We are basically the cafe and subsequently the bar that tries to tackle all of your liquid needs, whether it's coffee, whiskey, or, I don't know, chai if you're into that kind of thing.
Or any other spirit, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, Ryan, thank you for coming on. Thank you for coming on the podcast. And, we were talking about this before. I think the value in this episode, because I've interviewed other people within the bar industry in Providence and Rhode Island, right? I've interviewed other entrepreneurs, but I think the value in this episode, because we're going to be going, for anybody who's listened to the show before, thank you, first off. But secondly, this is going to go on a couple of different tangents. I've made jokes. It's like a Tarantino movie. We're going to be jumping around in the timeline and shit. But the reason why I say that, I think the value is going to be your experience as a manager, as a leader, leader of the team that works here, but also this idea of adaptability and being malleable, not just your own professional career in life, but also New Harvest, the company. So this is not going to be like a straight up New Harvest episode, hopefully a future episode, but I think this is going to be more about the way I'm envisioning it. And I think with the way the questions are going to go to, and we'll find out as this episode goes on, is more about being adaptable, being able to adapt to your surroundings, to the current trends, but then also like the value in that, and then the value of how do you lead in that way as well, and how do you treat your employees, how do you treat your customers, and how do you adapt, and how do you be able to change, but also to kind of keep the core spirit of whatever it is that you're doing.
Fantastic.
Which I think is valuable for anybody who's currently working right now. If you're a manager, or if you're an entrepreneur and you're trying to scale up your company and you have enough self-awareness where you know you're not going to be that kind of manager, well, you're probably going to have to hire some people to be able to do that for you. So hopefully if you're listening to this, you get some kind of value out of this episode. But as previous episodes have indicated, I try to be the Providence version of Nardwuar, and you're one of the first people that I couldn't find much information on. So it's a good thing I know you somewhat personally, just from being a patron and being behind the bar and working with you in a couple of different capacities. But,
smoke and mirrors, my friend.
Yeah,
smoke
exactly. It's like you know what? See, you're smart enough. You're like, I can't put everything out on the internet. I don't do that.
Nor do I want to.
Yeah, I don't do it because I've worked in tech, but you haven't done it. But I do know a couple of things. One thing. So here's my first question: correct me if I'm wrong, how does a history major get into the bartending business? How does that happen? What tangent did you take where you're like, yeah, or you were like, you know what, I always wanted to study the history of Scotch. Was that the deal?
That's a lot of it. Interesting question. I mean, it's a fair question too. I think we all have dreams about what we're gonna do. Early on, I don't know. I kind of wanted to be I wanted to work in a library. I really wanted to deal with old books and maps. And then when I started realizing what that actually meant is, you have to spend 12 years of your life working as a lowly, kind of behind the counter, getting angry at a late book fee kind of person, and work your way up to something like a special collections room person.
I will say though, Providence has some cool libraries. Like, aren't there like the one library that has like books bound in human skin or something? Oh,
absolutely. Well, there's the Athenaeum, which is like one of the oldest. It's a beautiful building. Oddly, what's funny is I don't read. I
love books.
I want to work in a library. I want to deal with them, but I don't read at all. So kind of an oxymoron there, but I'm
just getting flashback of Wayne's World.
Yeah,
the worst part is I never learned how to read.
I'm a walking contradiction, and maybe that's a beautiful thing. But my whole family is involved in education. I mean, my father was an educator to a degree, as far as he went to seminary. He taught religion for a long time. My mom's been an educator for 40 years in Barrington. My grandfather was the registrar at Brown. My brother Steve, he's a professor and a science chair at Portsmouth Abbey High School. My brother Dan teaches overseas in Abu Dhabi. So coming out of high school, LaSalle Academy, go Rams, I figured instead of spending an insane amount of money on a school that, I can't afford and, that will take me away from the state I love, let me go right down the street to Rhode Island College, go Anchorman, which is renowned for its education department. And I said, all right, so if my whole family's doing this, maybe I can, I have the gift of gab. I can talk a lot. I can, I'm patient to some degree, although each passing year it's waning on me and I'm hating the world and people even more. But I decided, all right, let me go to school for history and eventually I'll teach it. Found out that the teaching aspect of this, kind of career or this major that I was trying to get, was adding about 3 years extra to my schooling. So I'm like, forget about it. I'll just get the history major. I love history. High school teacher, Mark Carty, great guy. He opened my world to history and what it means. He took it away from memorize dates, memorize, names, and he kind of presented it as like a story. I love stories. So he changed the world of history for me. As far as drinking's concerned, I mean, I wasn't that guy that drank when I was 16, 17, whatever. I was kind of a noob, and I didn't drink throughout high school. I didn't smoke really. Freshman year of college, I was kind of trying to see what the fuck I was trying to do. That whole awkward period of who am I? What kind of person do I want to be? But it was until like sophomore, maybe junior year, I really started kind of getting into it. And you start off with doing there's one spirit that you can't drink anymore because you went too hard on it, right? That was Scotch for me. It was like I was in my buddy's basement. We were passing around a bottle. his dad wasn't there. It was one of those classic weekends where we had a friend on the lookout, and like,
it's like something straight out of like an 80s teen.
Oh, comedy. Absolutely. We're chasing with a Sam Adams Boston Lager. You know what I mean? So we're taking sips of single malt scotch and chasing with a Sam Adams.
This is a John Hughes script, basically.
And I think it was in that moment where I was like, I want to devote my life to scotch. No, I got pretty sick. I didn't get as sick as my friend. We got found out. And the next morning was church. And that's I was staying over his...
Oh, that's definitely a John Hughes fan.
Yeah, I was staying over my friend's house because his father was going to drive me to church the next day. And we go to Sunday school before the service, and my mom is actually teaching Sunday school that lesson. And her lesson was all about telling the truth. And
you picked the worst possible time.
What? Things happen in my life where I can't deny it. It's just like, I don't necessarily... I believe in a higher power. I don't know what to call it, but... Whether you call it, the signs, whether you call it the stars, I don't care what you call it. There's something about things that happen to you that just, this stuff always happens to me. So I have to tell her, his father's like basically like, all right, you're not going to get in trouble. You have to tell your mom. I'm not going to tell your mom. You're an adult, and you got drunk, so I'm not going to punish you, but you have to tell her. So I tell her, and she's like, oh, she threatens to kick me out of the football team, blah, blah, blah. She's very sad, but, she ends up punishing me. But, after that, it kind of opened my eyes to what spirits are a little bit. That was my first getting drunk incident. But after college, I have always been involved in the restaurant scene. I started working in Newport, Rhode Island at Perro Salado.
That was going to be my next question. What led you to Perro Salado?
Yeah.
And in Newport, because if you're going around college, like I grew up around there, that's like Providence, North Providence area. Yeah. And then like Newport's like kind of in Rhode Island perspective, for anybody outside of the state, like they'd be like, why are you guys complaining? But like in a Rhode Island sense, it's a pain in the bucks. It's like a 30 to 40 minute drive depending on traffic.
The classic pack a lunch. You gotta cross two bridges. It's not getting any better. People, Rhode Islanders love to complain about anything they can, and we reserve that right as a born and raised.
But from the choice of bars that are like around the area, or like your vicinity to downtown in relation to where you went to college, because downtown would probably be closer and probably have a higher, if not like depending on like the year, like because this is like we're talking X amount of years previously. So why Newport? You're like, yeah, let me go over that bridge. Let me do that pain in the butt thing, and let me go to Newport.
So my brother Dan, he had the job there before, and he kind of was just like throughout college, he was like, hey, we need another helper. We need another helper. And I'm like, you know what? I don't want to do the whole two jobs thing.
So nepotism, a very Rhode Island thing.
Nepotism, exactly. And I don't want to do the whole two jobs things. Flash forward, I'm sure, we'll get to that. But, throughout my life, I've had 9 jobs. But, I was young and stupid. And, I was like, no, I already have one job. And oddly enough, that was in coffee. I wore the green apron for about 4.5 years. I worked at Starbucks right downtown at the One Financial Building. And that's where, kind of my coffee knowledge basically sprouted, from what it taught me a lot of things. It taught
was this during college or post?
Yeah, I got my job at Starbucks my freshman year of college. So basically it was my college gig, which helped me, say what you want about Starbucks. Honestly,
it paid the bills.
It paid the bills, and it taught me structure. My mom beat it into me long before that, but, it taught me a lot of things as far as a corporate atmosphere that, makes sense for, I don't know. I think everyone should have a corporate gig, whether they hate it or not. In some point,
you get to see stuff at scale, which I think is interesting, because to be able to do something consistent at scale, whether you want to, whether you think it's good or bad, it's still a marvel even to me that it's a consistent bad. Like, I am not a fan of Starbucks, but I think it is interesting that it's not a different bad at a Starbucks in Texas versus a Starbucks in Rhode Island versus a Starbucks in Massachusetts.
It's the same bad.
It's the same bad consistently, which I think, like, in a weird way, there's something to be said about that.
Sure.
And I think, like, if you're going to run a business or be an entrepreneur, okay, maybe you don't want to scale to that size, but, like, working in a big corporate environment, one of the positives is you can at least see how the ways where things work right from things at scale, and the ways that it doesn't work right, and you can kind of like, that's like maybe the one thing to take away is it's like, okay, this is how they consistently do stuff at scale. This is why they put systems in place that are repeatable, so that they can scale this thing out.
Yeah, I have this argument with my partner all the time about Chick-fil-A. Like, hate their practices, hate what they stand for, but you can't knock the system that they have in place, and they print money. You know what I mean? Starbucks is the same way. You know, it's like better practices, better understanding about, you know, politics and where they stand in the fold. But, you know, they're like you said, it's the higher, or like just their systems in place as a small business. You know,
the larger you scale,
right,
the more those systems have to be tightened up.
Exactly.
And if they're not, then you're going to have issues.
Yeah.
So that is interesting. So I didn't realize you worked at Starbucks. So
I did.
You did the reverse. You were like, I want to work at the biggest. I'm going to go the other way.
Exactly.
So
Flashback to, you know, the question you asked me. I was working at Starbucks, and, you know, so he was like, all right, we need an extra hand. We need a busser. And I'm like, you know what? I've said no to this kid for 3 years now. So my senior year, I was like, you know what? All right, I'll work 1 day a week as a busser in Newport. My first shift, I worked my ass off. And I never worked at a restaurant before. I was 17. Never worked at a restaurant before. Oh, no, I wasn't 17. How old was I? A junior year of college. So that must have been, I was like 20, 19. We're right around there. I worked for like 7 hours straight. And coming from Starbucks where we have scheduled breaks, 15, half hour, you know, get lunch, whatever.
Again, that corporate scaling, because
7 hours straight.
Sued.
At one point, I tapped someone on the shoulder, and I'm like, when do we get our break? And they laughed in my face.
Yeah, like,
that was like
break?
The first moment of my life where I'm like, oh, I'm like a different, you know, this is totally
a different beast.
But then I got cash at the end of the night, and I don't know if you've ever worked in Newport, or if, you know, anyone listening worked in Newport, Rhode Island. The cash down there is a different animal, and it sucked me in right away. I mean, I'm a hard worker, no matter what I'm doing, whether it's gardening or I don't care. I know one speed, and it's hard work. You know, I'm not going to half-ass anything really, because you know, probably from how I was raised, I see a need and I need it to be done. It's to the point now where it's like, all right, I got to calm down a little bit. You know what I mean? But I see the need, I do it. So I quickly rose. You know, anyone that's been to Perro Salado, anyone that knows Dan and Andy as owners now, Geraldine, they're just fantastic people, and they see potential. For
anybody that doesn't know Perro Salado or Newport, just because I hope there's people outside Rhode Island listening to us, can you describe just the area of Newport, what it's like, what kind of like area it is, why the cash is so good, and then describe what Perro Salado is.
Newport's a funny beast. You know, it's everyone always asks me, you know, you work here, but you don't live here. Why don't you live here? And I'm like, you know, I like making money here, and I like leaving. You know, it's a very incestuous kind of, you know, everyone knows what you're doing, but also a very just fun-loving, you know, very accepting place as well. Perro Salado is the perfect storm of location. You know, it's right off the highway. It's right when people ask, "Oh, I don't know where it is." I usually say it's right across the street or right down the street from White Horse Tavern, the oldest tavern in America, from what they say. But I'm pretty sure they have records to back it up.
They do. Actually, I've seen them framed on the wall. And Newport being like a very tourist area because it's like $1 million mansions. I think the mansion scene from True Lies was filmed there, and it's like on the water. And it's like it's like old money, like the leaders of the free world were like having their summers
super
there.
Old money. I mean, Vanderbilt had his houses there. You know, like it just super old money. But the convenient place, or the convenient location of Perro Salado, it's right off. So you get off the highway, we're right off, you know, it's right on Charles Street, which is right in kind of Charles Square, which is kind of right off one of the more like historic aspects or districts of Newport. It's not on Thames Street. It's not on, you know, kind of that whole area of, you know, just like the tourist area of like crap. You know what I mean? Perro Salado is like this right on Charles Street, right on this like perfect kind of oasis of not a lot of things happening. You know, there's Broadway, which is more old school, kind of more industry forward, you know, kind of a very just kind of more welcoming, you know, not like sterile and tourist trap ridden.
Right.
So, I mean, and it's one of the more premier kind of, if you're looking for a great margarita, I mean, that's the place to be. You know, so I started there as a busser, and I worked my way up, and I quickly became one of the, you know, the head bartenders there. And I didn't know the first thing about bartending. I mean, I started as a bar back.
I was going to ask if that was your education.
Yeah.
Was that your bartending school, so to speak?
Basically. I mean, people ask me all the time, they're like, well, how did you go to school for this? And look, if you're trying to be a bartender out there, to anyone that's trying to be a bartender, I mean, get a restaurant gig and start as a bar back. I mean, if you can hustle, if you can run, if you can literally physically run and get things and cut fruit and stock things, get a bar back gig and work your way up from there. Like if you're an 18-year-old, if you're a 21-year-old trying to like make it in the buess, start there.
And not to interrupt, but just because I love doing this, because I have enough episodes to do this now, to reference Jen, of the Eddie and Dirks fame, and we'd like to get your quick thoughts on this, just before we go into the bartending school that was Parasol. I want to get into that a little bit. Do you think that people even today underestimate like how lucrative bartending can be compared to like? Because I remember like Jen, waxing poetic on this, and I agree with like pretty much damn near everything she said about like do people not realize like bartending is pretty lucrative, and like it's like one of the few jobs that if you don't have a degree you can make as much if not more with somebody with a degree, depending on like the circumstances and everything, like just I don't know if you saw that or experienced the same thing. Or...
Yeah, my experience was very I had to see, I kind of trial by fire. I didn't realize any of this. And I like to preface this when people ask me this, like when I told my mom I was going to be a bartender instead of, a teacher or coming as
let's ask how was that conversation?
Yeah, I have a bachelor's degree in history. I could get a private teaching gig somewhere at a private school or whatever, or, try to do that. But, what she fell in love with or what she admired was the work ethic involved, like in basically busting your ass, 40, 60 hours a week, and doing some hard shit that she didn't really realize was part of the gig. As far as the money's concerned, yeah, Jen's totally right. And the tricky thing about the money with bartending is you got to be smart about it. And not a lot of bartenders are. I mean, especially working in Newport, you're getting cash hand over fist, in the middle of summer. And it's like, all right, so ideally you should be probably stashing some of that away. You should probably set up like, whether it's like an Acorn investment account or like, take some of this away, stash some aside,
Because we're not in California, like right. Newport's like a slave to winter where it's not always warm.
Yeah. And I hate to say it, but the end of the tax season fucking ate me in the ass every time. At the end of the year, everyone looks forward to tax season, right? Everyone's like, all right, I'm going to get a tax return. I can't wait to file. They're filing early if they can. No, I waited to the last day every year, if not longer than the last day, because, I don't know how much money I've owed the IRS over the past, 7 years. Because, depending on where you are, you're getting cash tips. Depending on what's declared, depending on what you declare, ultimately, IRS is going to find out about it, and it's going to take a bigger hit from you. But that being said, if you're smart about bartending, and if you're at the right location, if you're at an institution that understands what those cash tip means, a lot of places are instituting kind of a move to cash tips being all of your tips being in a paycheck, so that the government, Uncle Sam, can track that shit and take what he needs to, and from there you can kind of be comfortable with the fact that you're not walking out with $500 every night, but ultimately it's going to work out in your favor at the end of the week.
Right.
So yeah, bartending. I mean, as a job, it's hard work. It's not for everyone. You either have it or you don't. You really do. It's and those that do make it a career, and there's nothing to knock that. I mean, bartending as a career is changed tenfold. I mean, people are understanding exactly what that means.
So, I have a question before we get into like the bartending education at Parasolato, because I want to dive into that. Mm-hmm. But were you at Parasolato and you're getting your bartending education, so to speak, and you're still trying to do the educational job, like because that you went to school for, or was like that happening like in parallel? Like, was there a certain breaking point where you're just like, no, I want to do this now. I don't even care about the thing, Because at some point, I guess there had to have been a breaking point.
What's funny is I was at Starbucks and doing Parasolato for about, I think, 6 months doing both.
Oh, so you're doing that at the same time?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a cross.
I was finishing school and I was doing both at the same time. And I kind of got to I stopped caring about Starbucks. I did the job really well. Like, bartending, but, I was on different cafes around, Starbucks has this community of like, all right, so Thayer Street, Barrington, Newport. You can be a barista at one store and work other stores because it's the same training, right? That goes back to the systems they have in place where you can plug in and plug out.
Yep.
in numerous cafes around the state, I had a frequently most called, barista name, like Ryan Zins. Here's his phone number if you need a shift covered.
Gotcha.
Do it, because I worked. That's all I knew how to do, and that's what I did. I got burnt out, so I just stopped showing up on time. I was oversleep my alarm because I was working late nights at Parasolato. I was drinking more. I was having a good time. I was living the college life that everyone loves, right? That you see movies about, or you see, things online about, so so they were basically like, all right, my manager was great. She's like, we're not going to fire you. We're going to give you your 2 weeks because we appreciate all the hard work you've done. And you're just, after your 4.5 years here, it's kind of time for you to phase out. So I did. And then I became full-fledged Parasolato. And that's when I started my 2 shifts a week, became 5 shifts a week. I was making the drive down there in whatever beater I had at the time. I'd never had a car that worked, but, I rode the 60. Props to Ripta. I don't know if I should say that, but the number 60 is an interesting ride from Kennedy Plaza down to Newport, Rhode Island, but it's only $2, and honestly, it saved my.
The fact that $2 could get you from literally the capital of Providence to the water in Newport is kind of insane.
It is, and it was the last stop, so I could pass out, and it's not like I'm going to miss my stop.
Yep.
I don't know how many times the busser would just come over and kick my leg and say, "Hey, we're at the last stop. Got to get off." I'm like, "Thank you, boss. Appreciate it." So I was riding the bus. I got there whichever way I could because Newport was just like this, like what I said before, just like this enigma, just like this thing that, I don't know, as a worker in Newport, like I said, with bartending, you either have it or you don't. Newport's either going to make or break you. It's that type of town where you either have what it takes to make it work, which I did for 9 years, or you don't, and you let it kind of consume you, and you fall into many different avenues. Unfortunately, what happens to people that work in Newport in the industry? Either you fall into like that depression of, I'm here all the time working insane hours, and all I do afterwards is kind of drink with my friends, or it's a beautiful place, but you'd be surprised how dark it gets, because I don't. If you've ever noticed this, with extreme wealth, there's always extreme poverty as well. So Newport's like this.
Newport's a duality.
Yeah,
it's very much mansions and like the richest people and tourists, but then there's also like government housing there,
has one of the
former military housing there, and
worst drug rates, one of the worst kind of homeless rates, and same with my brother lived out in Hawaii for 2 years. He saw the same thing. It's paradise, but
it can also be hell on earth.
It's hell on earth. Yeah. So like leaving Newport was huge for me. I not only after.
Were you living in Providence and going down?
I was commuting. Okay. Yeah. And that was, I needed to be in the city I loved, the city I grew to love, and kind of just, I was always that transplant. I had Newport friends and I had Providence friends, and Providence friends would go down to Newport, but they wouldn't do it that often.
Yeah.
Newport friends would rarely come up to Providence because it's that like, I have to,
Before we go into the bar training, because we're definitely getting into it. Do you think that helped, like being in Providence, like not getting into the Newport trap as you said it, before?
I think it did. I think it was huge for me. Absolutely.
So now you're bartending. You leave Starbucks. You're bartending full time at Parasolato, or like you're getting more shifts. I'll put it that way. You're getting your bartending education. Were you still either in college or graduating college? Like, were you still like, I'm going to do this history thing, or did it get to a point where you're like, the money is too good? Like, what was it about bartending that you're like, yeah, this history thing was good, but nope. I
think more than the money, which was amazing. That's what keeps you coming back. It was the people. It was okay. Like I said before, I've always been a social person. I mean, my mom always told me from the age of 5, I could walk into a room and have everyone just kind of eating off my finger or a hand, whatever that means,
Yep.
But I'm also, I'm not a pompous person. I'm not, I hate to, it makes me uncomfortable to talk about myself. So right now it's kind of weird, but it's.
And you're hearing yourself in headphones.
Yeah, which is terrible.
Weird mindfuck for you.
It is. It's the first time. And I don't know, I can kind of get used to it. So maybe I am a little condescending. I don't know. So yeah, I fell in love with the people. I fell in love with the conversations I had. I fell in love with the space I can kind of cultivate. There's something about 3 feet of, would in between you and a you know, kind of your customer, that can kind of dissolve if you're interacting, you know, on a you know, the perfect way.
Because like you're like part therapist, part like friend, part like, you know, slinging drinks, part like you're playing a lot of different roles depending on who comes up to the bar that night at that time.
And I don't, for all the service industry people out there, we've all felt this in some way or other. There are certain nights that are complete shit, that nothing is going right. Where like I don't care if you're overpouring, you're dropping bottles, you're spilling things, customers don't like you, the tips are bad, you know, you're ringing in things wrong, the kitchen is slow. I mean, and those days are probably more, you know, prevalent than the others, or more you know what I'm saying, more frequent. But then there's always that shift that just everything is clicking right. I mean, you're interacting with the customers, they're laughing, you know, they're leaving you big fat tips and they're saying thank you so much for an amazing night. You know, you're ringing everything in right. You're, you know, like I like to call it octopus bartending. You know, you feel like you have 9 different limbs that you're just like,
you're just in a flow state,
right? A flow state, exactly. You know, you're just in that, and I've never been able to replicate that feeling, but being behind the bar. You know what I mean? That's what I fell in love with.
So it just made sense to you.
It made sense. Okay, to me. It clicked.
This is clicking.
And I knew right then when that first night happened that everything clicked. I'm like, I can see myself doing this for a long time.
So now, you know, this just occurred to me. So, you know, everything's clicking. Now you're getting your bartending education at Parasolata, right? Mm-hmm. So now we're finally getting into it. People are like, 30 minutes in, it's finally happening. But what I think is interesting is that you came from an education background. Yeah. So did you approach learning bartending, because now that you've like managed like other bartenders and stuff, do you think that you approached it differently than maybe like somebody else who didn't have a background in education? And like, did you maybe dive deeper because you had a history thing? So were you like, oh, I'm going to learn everything there is to learn about rum, or I'm going to learn everything there is to learn about that spirit? Like, how did you approach like how did you get your education in bartending, but how did you approach it as well? Because I think that's probably different for everybody. And somebody with an education background, I wonder like if there was something like different the way that you approached it maybe than other people did.
I don't think the education background kind of came into play too much. I think what helped me is that I'm a sponge about certain things. You know, I always got the report card grade back saying, you know, has very gifted but lacks drive. You know, that stupid thing. You know, nowadays you'd blame the marijuana, but you know, it's back in middle school.
Or this person has ADD.
Yeah, exactly. Like, right.
Give him pills.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell?
No, right. Exactly. For history, once it finally clicked, I wanted to learn everything I could about it. For bartending, that was the same way. You know, once that mold happened, there was a puzzle piece that just fit perfectly. I'm like, all right, I'm going to dive head first into this, and I'm not going to put it down. Like, I don't read often, but if there's a book that I can't put down, then I'm going to tear through it, because, you know, it's just, I'm very kind of, I don't know if it's an addictive personality or if it's just like, I want to know everything I can about this, and I'm not going to stop until I do.
So I wonder if it's like the hard work thing. Like, I only know one speed when it comes to working. Like,
exactly.
Like I only know one speed when it comes to learning. It's like, I'm just going to dive in.
Yeah. So it's, I was asking questions constantly, almost annoyingly so, you know, on the bar, whoever I was shadowing at the time. Why'd you do that? You know, what are you doing there? And for me, that's how I like to train too. You know, I want someone to receive everything I'm saying and ask questions, but regurgitate and spit it back to me. You know what I mean? Like, that's how I learned. Or also, what's a great thing about Parasolata is that there wasn't a lot of shadowing. You know, when I had that, it was great, but ultimately they just kind of threw you to the wolves, or, you know, put you in the fire and said, all right, you're either going to make it work or you don't, you know? So you kind of have this, you have to have this resolve a little bit, you know?
Was this, and you learning about it, I'm just from a time frame perspective, because I think that might come into play, but correct me if I'm wrong. Was this at the time when, like, because I feel like like coffee, like bartending, like anything else in the world, right? There's like ebbs and flows, and there's certain like time periods, right? Was this the time like when craft bartending was like becoming a thing? Was it already a thing? Was it starting to creep in? Did it hit Newport yet? Just, I'm wondering how, like, the timing of bartending in general, how that affected, like,
it was already a thing. I don't think it hit Newport yet when I was there. Now Newport has craft bars almost everywhere. And if you're a city or a town that has a good bar scene and you don't have craft bars now, it's like,
Yeah, it's like,
all right, what are you doing? Ebbs and flows, right? You know, like it's totally. So I think yes and no. You know, like it was. We weren't craft. Parasolata was never craft. You know, and they have all this potential in the world to the point where towards the end of my tenure, I was like, all right, well, I love Newport as a city. I love that bar. New Harvest was offering me a better role, and I was like, all right.
Oh, we're going to get into that in a little bit.
Sure.
Because this is where it's going to get interesting.
Yeah. But I bought the boss aside in Newport, and I was like, you know, I want to lead this. They never had a bar manager. They never had a bar specific person to organize what they were doing. As
Really?
far as
That's interesting.
social media and everything like that. And I'm like, this is the wave of what's happening now.
Like, hey, like this is the like this is coming. Like
Yeah.
it should have been here already.
Yeah.
It's coming. Like,
And I'm homegrown. This is what I can do for you.
and were there other spots in just not to cut you off, but were there other spots in Newport that were seeing it's coming? Or
Oh, absolutely.
So
Yeah.
so you could even argue, I guess, to them like, hey, like other people in Newport are getting
Either
on this
shit or
thing.
get off the pot, you
Yeah,
know, it's-
like, do you want to be a part of this or not?
Yeah.
And I can be the guy to do it. And I'm homegrown. You don't got to like reteach me. I can.
No,
I can
I know
integrate
everything
this.
about this building.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the timing wasn't right. You know,
Gotcha.
bullshit. You know, I love, they're my family. And I can say that's bullshit because they are my family. You know, if she was sitting right here, I'd say it to her. But, you know, eventually it led me, I don't know, I made the right decision in my mind, you know, so.
Do you think it was a refusal to adapt?
I think so.
Hey, we're making money. Like what? Or like, hey, I've been running this business longer than you. We're making money. The books are good. Like, what the hell do you know?
Rhode Island as a whole is like that. Newport is a microcosm that's worse.
Oh, okay.
So
All right.
it's a magnifying glass of Rhode Island, you know,
Gotcha, okay.
in that mentality. Some places just and they close because they refuse to.
They refuse to adapt.
But you know, Paro's different. Paro works because it has just an insane following that I don't think it would ever let them close.
But I wonder if that's also like, hey, like you're never gonna close, but you're always gonna make this baseline of money, and it's never gonna get to like
Exactly.
even like
Yeah.
like oh like you must not like a lot of money, I guess, because so
Yeah.
like that's gonna be frustrating too. It's just like it's not enough for it to fail, but it's also like it's just enough where it's like it's like there's no need to change, so it never reaches its full potential.
And I'd never done anything like that. There was nothing on my resume that said I could run a bar.
Yeah.
You know, I bartended for 5 years when I had that conversation. You know, there was nothing saying I am a bar manager, but I knew what I wanted. I knew I could do it. I knew I could figure it out. And I just wanted to like I learned the whole way. I wanted to throw myself into it. And learn from that.
Was that a personal thing, or was that also like you were seeing the writing on the wall, or was it like an entrepreneurial spirit? Because I think that's interesting.
I was seeing the writing on the wall, and it was a personal thing. I wanted to. I don't push myself a lot, and I'm learning in adulthood. I'm 32 now. You know, we're going back to 20-year-old Ryan. You know, luckily I have a partner that has encouraged me. I don't know how much has made me into a better person as far as just like realizing what do you want in life and go get it, because the worst that they're going to say is no.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And what do you lose? You got to put yourself out there a little bit. And that was the first time I kind of put myself out there. And unfortunately it was no. And it kind of shook me a little bit. It did. But I learned fucking a great deal from that conversation. I really did. So I don't even care if they said no. You know, that was just like, all right, their loss. You know what I mean? From there, I'm going to figure it out.
Choosing growth over comfort. We live in a world that tells us to be risk averse and to stay within your comfort zone. Now listen, I'm not here to tell you to stop doing what works or to change up what brought you success in the first place. What I am saying is, how can you expect to reach your full potential if you never embrace a mindset of growth and change? Ryan wanted to push himself, so he embraced a growth and change mindset and expressed his ideas about managing a bar. However, his current employer at the time had a difference of opinion, and they went their separate ways. Ryan went on to manage New Harvest Coffee and Spirits, and that previous employer, they're still making money, but are they realizing the full potential of their business? I guess we'll never know. So which one will you choose? Growth or comfort? going to switch gears a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think this is a good place setting for the rest of this conversation. So we're, as you said before, as you said in the beginning of this episode, we're sitting in New Harvest. Can you explain to anybody listening what, not just this space, because the space in New Harvest is two different things, which I want to get into that.
Sure.
But what is the story and what is the brand and what is the company that is New Harvest Coffee?
New Harvest Coffee is operated, it's a family-run business by Rick Kleinfeld and his wife, Paula.
They founded it like, what, 2000, I think?
2000, yep. So we're going on 22 years now. Rick has been in the coffee scene in Providence since the early days of Coffee Exchange on Wickeden.
I was going to say probably one of the founders.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, he's definitely one of the founders, but as the coffee scene in general in Providence, he is on the Mount Rushmore. He has to be of the coffee scene in Providence.
He better be.
Yeah, and if he's not, then show me the person that's saying no.
Exactly.
And I'll talk to him. He's just I can't speak highly enough to who the type of boss he is, and I can't even call him boss because it's whether it's profit sharing, whether it's joint meetings, where like everyone has a voice, whether it's a competitive wage, whether it's working with the community, doing farmers markets, everything. I mean, the man, he's sweeping if he's not roasting coffee, if he's not
I was gonna say, even like the way they pay the growers, they pay them like, what is it, 20% over like what the fair trade amount is? Like they pay even more, and like just to make sure like people are taken care of.
Yeah, we call it
Source Direct program.
Source Direct program. Yeah, thank you. So it's above fair trade prices, Source Direct, and we have multiple direct relationships with coffee farmers in Central America, Africa,
South America,
and South America as well. Yeah. So New Harvest Coffee started in 2000. He kind of started working at farmers markets. I mean, and he eventually got a brick and mortar at the. It wasn't the Hope Artis to begin with.
Was it Rumford? I think it was like a shed or something.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Tiny.
Like almost like working like Apple in a garage, right? Everything has to start from small means, which is beautiful.
And it does a lot for the community of Providence too, like besides just the growers and everything else.
So he eventually moved to the Hope Artis building, which was like his biggest move that he, it was like a brand new building in Pawtucket off Main Street.
And just to keep this in perspective, just because again, place set.
Yeah.
When you say move, the roaster, not the cafe aspect, like the roaster of as far as roasting coffee and then making it for distribution wherever it's going to end up, right?
Yeah. So let me backtrack a little bit. New Harvest Coffee is primarily a wholesale coffee company.
You can get so many places in Rhode Island. There's a lot of, hence that Mount Rushmore thing, because Coffee Exchange, another OG roaster, but Coffee Exchange, not to knock them, they're kind of like their own cafe and their own thing, which is fine.
But that's not knocking them at all.
Yeah, but New Harvest is like, I can go to the local Whole Foods and like or a bunch of Whole Foods in the state of Rhode Island, and even in Mass when I was working in Mass,
you'll see our package.
And I've seen bags of your coffee. I've seen it in restaurants. I've seen it in like it's. It is. Other cafes serve it exclusively sometimes.
I've been dining at a restaurant, and I always try to order an espresso after dinner, whether it's with a Fernet or some sort of aperitif, and I'll be like, this coffee's delicious, and not even just being like, mainly trying to be like, oh, you should consider New Harvest, if you, and I'm like, who do you get your coffee from? And they're like, oh, New Harvest Coffee. Do you know it? And I'm like, yeah, I know it. Yeah. You saved me a sales pitch, like it's. We're everywhere, especially in Rhode Island, Massachusetts. I mean, it's hard, and it's a beautiful thing. So going back, we're a wholesaler at heart. We didn't open up our flagship cafe until, so that was 7 years ago. I'd say 2014.
So, all right. Well, pause there for a second, just because, so you're doing the Parasolado thing. You're like, I'm driven. I want to like run the bar. I know the bar scene's changing, They say no. New Harvest, not saying at the same time, but New Harvest is now, I won't say it is now, but like from 2000 moving forward, it's a wholesale roaster. Their leader is now one of the OGs of coffee culture in Providence. For those that don't know or who are listening from outside the state of Rhode Island, Providence is a very coffee city where it's funny that you worked at a Starbucks because if you're in Providence, you actually have to like and this is going to sound crazy being a New England area town, but I always feel like Providence and like Rhode Island's like New England and not New England.
I couldn't agree more.
Like it's both. It is and it isn't.
It's a transplant city, but at the same time, it's locals.
Yeah,
to like,
it's New England and not New England.
Yeah.
The reason why I'm saying that is because if you're in Providence, you actually have to seek out and search for a Dunkin' Donuts and or a Starbucks. It's actually easier to find a local cafe. Mm-hmm. So you have this
Providence, yes.
Yeah.
Rhode Island.
Yeah, Rhode Island. I was going to say Rhode Island, no. Providence, yes.
Yeah.
But as far as the Providence coffee scene, in Rhode Island coffee in general, like New Harvest is a known player. Mm-hmm. It's a big player. It is now. Probably was even then in the sense that like how many roasters were there really based out of Rhode Island that were local, and then
not many.
And like now that you can get in the supermarket, go to restaurants. If you're in Rhode Island, if you're in Providence, you know the name New Harvest. The name carries weight, and probably beyond, like within Massachusetts and other parts of the world, right? Depending on how far the distribution is. So there's that brand. You come out of Parasolato and being told no. How did you hook up with the New Harvest people?
Sure.
First off,
yeah.
And then I want to ask the question about where we're going to really get into, which is like the adaptability convergence of some very interesting ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. So my buddy Corey Straffolino worked for the company before they had this idea of opening up a cafe. I forget the year. I want to say it was like 2012, 2013. So I'm working at Parasolato, and he comes up to me and he's like, hey, I work for New Harvest. At the time, he was working for the tech company that, was kind of an offshoot of the company. Quick side, New Harvest is the trunk of the tree, has many branches. Northeastern is a branch of its tree that is a tech company that fixes espresso machines, grinders, what have you. It's a mobile fleet of techies. Another branch is Coffee and Spirits, which is our cafe, our flagship, what I run. Another branch is the education side. Jason and I happen to be sitting in the training lab at New Harvest Coffee and Spirits. We've always had a training aspect to, if you subscribe to our content or like our program, say you're a new cafe opening up, whatever. Not only do you get our coffee, you get our mobile fleet of tech crew, you get our education department. So you're getting a full on package. You're signing on the whole kit and caboodle. So those are the branches.
It's like when I used to work for Dell, they were trying to be end-to-end in the data center.
Yeah.
If you sign with New Harvest, it's not just here's our coffee wholesale, it's end-to-end coffee servicing. So that's interesting. I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, so you're dealing with one player. Different LLCs, but, same trunk of the tree.
One player, and they can service you from end to end.
Exactly.
Okay, gotcha.
So he worked for that mobile fleet at the time, and he goes, hey, Rick, he's interested in opening up a cafe in downtown. In the arcade. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. That's been closed for a while, but it just kind of reopened. And
quick but necessary aside, how would you describe the arcade? Because it was the first shopping mall. We had the first tavern in America. We had the first shopping mall in America. You're welcome, America, Rhode Island.
So bringing it full circle, right? Rhode Island is full of historic things. Hence, it was a big impetus with my love of history. We both live in a very historic state. A state that not a lot of people know where it is. One of the 13 originals, I'll say that. Yeah.
And what is it? May 4th, Rhode Island Independence Day, which shares Star Wars Day, and the first state to tell the British to go F off.
Yeah, well, I'm pretty sure we burned a ship way before Sam Adams was doing anything. Regardless,
it's gonna be a fun conversation. Hey, Massachusetts, what'd you do? We threw some tea off a boat. What'd you do? We burned a ship and killed everyone.
That's cute.
It's like Jesus Christ, Rhode Island, like. He was like, "What? They started this show. We're gonna finish it."
Yeah, always a little bit too extra.
We need a movie about that.
Yeah, seriously,
I think it's like a comedy action movie.
Right.
I don't know. Anyway,
so the arcade, the arcade is this. It's very old fashioned. You can find arcades in numerous cities around America. Basically, it's a cement building or whatever open market. Basically, that has everyone's built a little different, but the arcade downtown has entrances on both sides, open air. When the doors are open, but 3 floors of shops. They transform the 2 floors, the second and third, into micro lofts for this kind of second resurgence, or
because it was closed for a lot of years. It was closed for a number of years. It was kind of getting dilapidated, and then somebody went and bought it. And there's like
exactly.
micro lofts on the second and third floors, and then the first floor was going to be new business.
Yeah, and especially with the impetus on all local Rhode Island businesses.
Gotcha. Okay.
So Rick heard this and was like, all right, let me get New Harvest on the ground floor of this. And I've been meaning to, we're growing as a coffee company. We're in numerous cafes around the state. We're in Whole Foods, 7 Stars was probably our biggest buyer. They were carrying our coffee.
Which was a small but notable bakery cafe chain in Rhode Island.
Yeah, which had multiple locations. So Rick was like, finally, all right, we should probably have our own spot.
Have our own cafe. And I think they were in Pawtucket at the time. They didn't really, it was the roaster, but you could sit and have a coffee there, but it wasn't a cafe.
You could walk in and a roaster would begrudgingly stop what he was doing and help you and get a coffee.
But it was not the place to really have
not at all.
Espresso. It wasn't the right place for it.
So cut to New Harvest having this grand idea to open up a cafe, and Rick, thank God he did, was like, I kind of want it to be a bar too.
So that's interesting. Was that his idea from the jump? Because that's even now with all these different changes, that's either you're a cafe or a bar, but you're not both. And I was thinking, even now it's kind of like it's getting I think to be more of a thing. But back in that time, was that just did you ever get to find out where you got that idea from? Or was it just I want it to be a bar? And then also it was a very specific type of bar, which I have some questions about too.
Well, so all right, I think he just had the idea that it should be a bar as well. He didn't know what direction it would be in, and he wanted Corey had a background in restaurants, and he kind of just said, let's make it a bar, talk with whoever your workers are, and figure out what type of bar it's going to be. So Corey, hired an initial staff, which he basically said, right. He knew me so Corey worked in Starbucks back in the day. That's how I knew that connection long before. So he goes, right. I mean, how would you feel about working? I know you're at Paris Salata right now. How would you feel about working at a cafe that doubles as a bar?
And the fact that you're probably one of the few, and maybe it's not so rare, but at least to me, it's you're one of the few people that's done both.
Yeah, and that's what we look for, in the hiring process moving forward. But back then it was just he's a no-brainer. Let me ask him.
That's not even the norm now. How many people have done both, barista and bartender?
It's they're very similar. It's almost to the point where my buddy Vito, who owns Lucky Enough, we talk about this. He's like, I'll go a competent barista that's moving fast and knows what he's doing on the espresso bar can translate into bartending very easily. So you can actually go to local cafes, and if you're a bartender or a bar manager looking for capable workers, go to your local cafe in town and poach out the one that's moving. Can take multiple orders at once, move well in a confined space, and know exactly what's going on and push beverages out.
So really, that's the translation works both ways. Can a cafe owner go to a cocktail bar or just any bar and be oh, that person's moving their ass, they'll be fine in the cafe? Because
steps of service as far as ingredient building. What I mean? It's whether it's timing on the espresso machine, whether it's pumps of syrup, whether it's what type of milk you're steaming, how you're steaming
ratios.
Ratios as far as measuring, dialing espresso machines in. I mean, that's huge that's huge translation into bartending. But you were going back to your question. I mean, he approached me and was like, Rick wants to open up a cafe and a bar. Would you be interested in working? I'm like, yeah, man. I at that point, I'd been off coffee for about a year and a half. Kind of missing. I kind of missed a spot where I could go for a free cup of coffee, to be honest. I was paying for coffee too long in my life. So I'm like, yeah, if they're paying right, if I can bartend and be a barista, yeah, no brainer. I'm on board. So then I find out they want to translate into a whiskey bar. We want to be a whiskey forward cafe.
I was gonna say, did it you're hell yeah, and I can see why, because you're one of the people that at the time maybe I think it's interesting that the things are adaptable, but you're one of the people that you've worked in both. Did any of that sound weird to you? Just odd of what is this guy doing? Because it's it's gonna be a cafe and a bar. We're gonna serve coffee and whiskey. Is there gonna be some weird timings? Are we gonna open as close the thing and open as a thing? Did you have any weird questions like that, or I
think it was the complete opposite.
Oh, you're just this sounds amazing. Let's go.
To be honest, the moment I heard of it, I'm like, why hasn't anyone?
You're just why?
Why don't we see this? Why isn't Dunkin' Donuts selling? Yeah. Why isn't fucking
Didn't I think Starbucks started selling IPAs and stuff?
Well, they did.
It was only recently. It
was in Seattle ago. Too. It was at their whatever
flagship thing,
Pike's Place, whatever market. And now, after Coffee and Spirits has done its thing, you're seeing bars open up with a coffee bar program, throughout. I don't want to say we started it. I don't want to say but when we opened up in Providence, no one else was doing it. Yeah. I mean,
and I would say even now, I've been to a couple places even just take the landscape of America. It's probably not a norm thing even now.
Right. And to me, it was a no brainer, right? I wasn't asking questions to me,
why? Why not?
I wanted to be involved as quickly as possible. Okay. I really did. Because I knew there were so many things that we could work on as a crew.
And was there a reason, hey, whiskey's going to be the thing? Was it more hey, whiskey will pair well with coffee, or was it just the owner of New Harvest whiskey?
He loves whiskey. That's part of it. I think whiskey has a direct relationship with coffee as far as it's perfect thing to note as Irish coffees. That's the no-brainer. But there's so much as far as I think he wanted to mirror the vision or the process and kind of how coffee is cultivated and how whiskey is cultivated, and just the journey of both, which is a very we can probably have a complete separate podcast about how
do a whole podcast series about that.
Absolutely. It's nuts because whether it's down to the coffee farmer and
hey, head of New Harvest, there's a podcast idea you could do out of here, because we're not proving that you could do a podcast out of this room.
Oh, so absolutely.
Just get baristas and whiskey people on and make your own series. Just Ryan, if you get any credit for that, just give me a 2% cut. That's all I'm asking.
Let it be on record.
Yeah.
So I mean, the journey of both is fascinating, and I think there wasn't too many whiskey forward bars in Providence at the time. There was definitely a bunch out there, but what we wanted to separate ourselves was we knew we had a coffee following, and people would come to us as a cafe because that's what we're known for.
The New Harvest brand had a name and had an established
exactly.
base.
We had a brand, but we also now want to bring in spirits, and we want to do it in a way that it was not necessarily boutique, but different. We wanted to show that we had knowledge on the coffee side and knowledge on the spirit side. So then that came the impetus or the creation of Coffee and Spirits. Correlating both worlds of, the birth of coffee, the birth of spirits, how it got there, and how we can talk about both from a customer, from a provider to a customer standpoint.
And doing it in a way that's interesting, and because even I remember going in there and at some point you guys served pizza too, which was funny. The pizza was pretty damn good. But I just remember going there and that blew my mind. And I remember back when I was working in tech, I'd come and sit at I think there's a number of nights you were there. I'd sit at the bar with my laptop, do my presentations, and get a nitro and spike it with some Irish whiskey and be this is great. But then you also had. And maybe this was planting the seeds for this new spot, or actually answer me this question: was this because New Harvest was a multi-headed beast that not only hey, we're going to focus on spirits, tell that story, and really focus on whiskey and tell that story, but then doing whiskey tastings where things are really in depth? Was that a plan from the get-go as well, or did that come from because New Harvest was end to end? So it's let's be end to end with our cafe as well, or
that came from a lot of our own doing as far as us, those that worked at Coffee and Spirits. Before me was the bar manager was named Ben Terry. I mean, I can't say enough from not only Rick, I've learned a great deal from, but I learned my bar education was twofold: turn and burn and fast-paced bartending, and really understanding the culture of bartending was from Pero Salato. Really becoming a cocktail bartender and a craft bartender, I learned from Ben. Who was just, he's well known throughout. Right now, he leads the tasting room at Proclamation, but he's done multiple projects in the bar scene for many years. And he was the bar manager at Coffee and Spirits after Corey stepped down. We were both working there at the time. He got promoted. I'm totally fine with that. I wasn't even trying to, be that person at the time. I didn't know nearly as much. He's a wealth of knowledge. He knew. I mean, we had 130 whiskeys on the wall.
Yeah, I was going to say, your whiskey, it was...
For a small space,
hey, here's
impressive.
20. It was here's over 130 whiskeys. And for anybody to know, I go to certain bars and like I don't get mad when like somebody doesn't know a certain spirit. 'Cause I'm like there's so much on the bar. The fact that like and you had other spirits too, 130 whiskeys. It's like holy. And
he had talking points on all of them. And you know he did a lot of recipes for the syrups that we made in house. He did a lot of recipes for, you know, whether it was the frozen drinks we were making in the frozen drink machine. I learned an incredible great deal from him. You know, whether it's making an old fashioned, a Manhattan, what goes into a Manhattan, you know, how to stir, when to shake, you know, what do you want your drink citrusy or do you want your drink more classic and stirred? I owe a lot to that guy. I think so a lot of that was stuff he built. And unfortunately where we weren't a part of the beast yet. We weren't a part of that trunk of New Harvest that, you know, honestly at the arcade. That was going to be
my next question. Like how much, like that's probably a good thing that like they kind of let you do your own thing, but then at the same time, if like you're not, if they don't have, if the bigger company doesn't have that kind of control, then it's like you don't get necessarily like all the benefits of. It's a weird like balancing act. I can only say I've worked for a bigger company in the tech space, but it's like, hey, you got all this control. You're on your own. You could do like some wild shit, great. But then the other side of that, and I just want to ask that question, was the other side that like New Harvest, because you weren't fully integrated into the beast yet, New Harvest didn't like how to like utilize it to its full potential, I guess is my question.
Exactly. Yeah, it was one of those things. I said it a lot. You know, we were kind of. It's probably not PC for me to say, but the redheaded stepchild of the business for a while. You know, we were at the arcade for 6 years. And I'd say in 6 years, we weren't the most profitable, you know, at all. If anything, we were just kind of breaking even. We were doing a lot of things that we were kind of just learning. You know, we were very new as a company to opening a bar. You know, we just thought, hey, we have this great coffee program, but let's open up a bar too. And
a brand new revitalized space that had been dormant for years. And then everything in there, foot traffic wise, is all other brand new spaces that haven't done anything. Like, in the sense of like having the like, I think you probably had the most brand recognition of anybody in that entire space because it was New Harvest. But if it was just any other bar, you wouldn't have. And
we had, you know, the arcade, it was such a beautiful space. It had its limitations. You know, the hallway doors, the main entrances closed at 8 p.m.
Yeah, you had to go around to the parking lot, get to your spot.
We called it poop alley because, you know, homeless people would just, you know, take shits in the alley. And it was just like, you know, whether you might have to pass a guy shooting up, but, you know, here's our speakeasy entrance because it's cool to say. And
I think it helped when you had the New Harvest, like the giant, like paint on like, the side of the building, like the vent. But like before that, you had no idea. Like,
but even then, it's just so you really had to know where we were, and it unfortunately kind of handicapped us in a lot of different ways.
It sounds cool, but from a money making perspective, it's like
it just wasn't doing it. And you know, flash forward to where we are now. I mean, that's why we were so excited for this project. And, you know, it's a totally different ball game now. I mean, we're even like, I don't have 130 whiskeys on the wall anymore.
Yeah.
Like I learned so much from what worked and what didn't. And then when the pandemic hit 2 years later, I mean, we were doing nothing for 2 years. All I had was time to think. And I'm like, I got this new project, right? And I'm like, all right, how can I make this better? And that's all I did. I sat and thought.
So you're working at New Harvest doing this, you know, made sense to you, right? But I think you were talking about how like your dad even now like is like, wait, are you a cafe, a bar? And it's like we're both. And it's like, wait, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So can you just explain at that time? Because it made sense to you because you worked in both. Like, why aren't we? And, you know, and like we have the benefit of hindsight. How were people like customers receptive, or like did they not understand it at the time, or did it take a while for it to be like, oh, we have coffee, but we're also a bar? Like, did it weird people out? Like they're getting their 9 a.m. coffee or something, and then they see like, a bunch of whiskey on the wall. Like, what the hell is this?
It weirded a lot of people out more than we thought it would.
Oh, right. Like so you thought it was going to be like, so did everybody think it was like, oh, people are going to love this like we do, and then they're like, what the hell is this?
Exactly. I think it weirded a lot of the coffee scene people out. You know, everyone that wants to get a morning cup of coffee. I mean, I don't know how many times we heard the joke from the suit downtown that was like, oh, and throw something else in there.
Yeah, because you're also near like where you were situated downtown, you were near like the financial district area, like the office workers that were downtown. Like people were probably getting their daily coffee from you guys.
And this was before, you know, beverages to go were a thing, which is a new kind of legislation in Rhode Island. because of the pandemic.
And by beverages, we mean alcoholic beverages.
Alcoholic beverages, yes. So at the time, you couldn't take anything to go, but people always joke, it was the running joke to be like, yeah, well, like, throw something else in there, and then we'd be like, oh, all right. Like, oh, no, I'm going back to work.
Then you're like, dude, we don't care. Like,
we don't care.
Wanted.
But, and it's also like, that's what we're trying to be. Like, we're combining the beautiful worlds of spirits and the journey of both spirits and coffee. And we're not saying that you have to have them both at the same time. You can have one or the other, or you can combine the two.
It's just like, hey, there's some similarities here that can work together, and they can make a new type of experience.
Right. In the early stages that we had this design, it was a Venn diagram, right? There was like coffee, spirits, and then the middle.
I remember that old logo, yeah.
Coffee and spirits. It's kind of, it's outdated, but that was our general idea. That's what we wanted to, promote. But yeah, people like my father, they need. And maybe that's an older way of thinking. I think a younger crowd, we're in year 8 now. Where people are understanding.
But at that time when it premiered in Province, like, was it, like, were there certain crowds that were like turned off by, and certain crowds that were just like, how much educate? Like, did you have to educate people on like this is what this is?
Definitely. Our first 2-3 years was tough. I mean, I'd say by year 4, we were finally, people understood where we were. We were also one of the later cafes open. You couldn't find a cafe open in Providence
past like 6 p.m.
Past 6. We were open until 10, 11. You know what I mean?
You get a coffee at post work.
Yeah. And then have a whiskey or a beer.
Yeah.
And like, it was a beautiful thing. So we were huge for the universities. I mean, we had a huge RISD following, Brown following, JWU. We had a great business during the day.
You had a lot of colleges with like satellite places down there. So that was probably,
We had a great business from the suits, during the day. And, but it was tough. People didn't really get what we were. And that's, a lot of it's on us. We weren't, this time around, we're definitely thinking about how we can promote this business a little differently. We're definitely putting the pressure on, all right, New Harvest Coffee and Spirits is our flagship location. It's our most public-facing location.
Whereas before, it was like this offshoot thing.
It was this offshoot thing. Yeah, exactly.
It was an experiment.
Yeah, an experiment that did well enough that it should be a thing.
Gotcha.
To the point where, like, I don't know, down the road, the bigger, like, if we can add coffee and spirits to the plug-and-play system of New Harvest Coffee, say someone else wants to do exactly what we're doing, and we can franchise it.
Oh, you can do end-to-end.
Right. Okay. Say, like, all right, you want to have a bar too? All right, so you're going to need to talk to Ryan. He's going to set you up with a bar program, a cocktail menu, something that's basically a plug-and-play cafe and bar. We're going to service your machines. We're going to teach you the education side, whether it's from Britta, the coffee side, or Ryan, the bar side. And you can kind of get a whole package. So that's or certain things like the airport, where like TF Green was on the verge of creating this, and they might still happen, but this project was scrapped a little bit. They wanted to basically make TF Green a more like local business run airport. So like They wanted to kick Starbucks out of there and basically put coffee and spirits right at the bottom floor. I mean, coffee and spirits would kill it in an airport. I mean, it literally is an airport.
I would rather get that than Starbucks any day of the week.
And it's a bar cafe. I mean, how would that not do well in an airport? You know what I mean? Wi-Fi, computers, coffee, or a fucking scotch at 9 a.m. because you just got off a red eye. You know what I mean? Like, it makes total sense. Those things, unfortunately, the worldwide pandemic and what everyone's going through hit us just like everyone else did. It basically forced our hand to be like, all right, we know our limitations at the arcade. We know what we're doing wrong. We know what, we can do better on. Do we fight through it? Or do we just close and start something new?
Before we get into that, did, at the time when, because you just said it's an experiment that worked well enough that it should be a thing. Mm-hmm. At the time, did you and the other people working there realizing that you, like, because you were like, oh, this makes sense to me, but like that you were doing something kind of like, I won't say groundbreaking, but something new that like just wasn't the norm, and like how was your reactions to that? And also, how was the owner of New Harvest, like how was his reaction to it? That like, oh, we're doing this new thing, this is new territory, like what were the reactions on both ends from like the quote unquote corporate owner side of New Harvest brand, and then from the people working on the ground level of like, did anybody realize like, oh, we're kind of like breaking new ground here, like we're in like uncharted territory? And how did that feel?
I think sort of they did and they didn't. I mean, as far as the workers were concerned, I mean, I think I did. I can't speak for everyone else. I think Ben knew that there was something there, but like it was a hard time. Oftentimes we felt like we were spinning our wheels a little bit and not getting the support from, the owner. It was just it was out of sight, out of mind, kind of just downtown. I mean, he was doing insanely busy in Pawtucket and doing his own thing. And it was just hard to kind of connect, especially when the money wasn't coming in the way it should have been. I mean, like I said, we were a new business and we were spending in a way that we probably shouldn't have been spending, so there was a lot of things we had to learn. So I think from his standpoint, he always loved the idea, and wanted it to succeed, but we were limited by, with the space we were in and what we were trying to do at the time.
So the pandemic hits. Was that the catalyst for, or were there other things going on? Was this already in the books, already like in the cards, so to speak, as far as, because at the time, New Harvest had its roaster area in Pawtucket, one location, right? It had the, coffee and spirits, which wasn't considered a flagship at the time, as you said, in the downtown Arcade in Providence. COVID hits. Was that the main catalyst of like, here's an opportunity to rethink everything, or was the CEO thinking at the time like, oh, I should just have everything in one building? Was that like, hey, I should have everything in one building, but like we don't have the space yet? And then like, was it a convergence of things? Because I think that's interesting too, like that adaptability of like, because now we're in an area where it's like, oh, roaster literally connected to the bar/cafe. That makes so much sense, but it's like, yeah, that seems on paper like a no-brainer, but I'm wondering like how it got to that point.
Yeah, we were, after year 6, we were kind of getting to our limit with the space we were in at the arcade, as far as just, we knew we needed something different. We didn't think we could do 2 locations. It was either move out of there or honestly scrap the project, like
scrap the experiment,
make it just a cafe somewhere else.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? Like, this project was always in mind as far as just being a roastery. Like Farm Fresh had contacted him before. He knew of this project before it was happening, like before the pandemic hit. So it was always, all right, we're going to move out of the Hope Artiste building, move our roastery here, and then look for a different location for coffee and spirits. Pandemic hit, or rather look for a different location or stay where we are in the arcade. No matter what, Farm Fresh was going to be our roastery. We either keep coffee and spirits at the arcade, try to make it work, or look for a different location and just make it a cafe. Pandemic hit, we didn't want to there was the restrictions about, having, it could only be 50% capacity, you could be open, but our capacity in there was 35 people, so we didn't want to limit us to an even down, and we couldn't have bar seating, so it didn't work as far as, no one was opening up a cafe. As far as a coffee business is concerned, handing out coffee via we didn't want to do the whole window service thing, whatever. So we just stopped you kind of just made an executive decision, all right, we're going to close down. Unfortunately, we had to, lay off our employees, which is a total bummer. We had a small staff, but, you never want to just tell someone that they don't have a job anymore. I think we were on the lower end of that by all intents and purposes. And so many people had to lay off people on a massive scale. But that being said, luckily a lot of people held on, and I have some of those workers today too. So they got their jobs back. They held out hoping that, here they are, and that's huge. I can't thank them enough for sticking around. But so this job, this building opened up, and
briefly describe the Farm Fresh building in Eric's. I know you said it before, but just to kind of give people an idea, because you're in this marketplace in the middle of a downtown area, and a kind of a tightly contained downtown style area, and this is a completely different animal that you're dealing with.
Yeah, so in the
space wise,
in the middle of the valley, in this weird kind of, across the street we have Industrial Spirits Company, which is the first distillery since Prohibition in Providence. in Rhode Island, I think, for that matter.
You've got Providence Brewing Company, which is named after the American ale company. Another episode you should listen to with Efren Hidalgo. You can talk about beer. Bringing it full circle, everybody.
Absolutely.
And Industrious Spirits Company. I did an interview with one of their CEOs. So it's another episode you can go listen to.
Absolutely.
I'm getting the entire
neighborhood
Sims
you can
app.
follow, kind of like this whole Valley podcast experiment. So it's.
We got Revival Brewing, and that's the whole thing.
So, and then, you got your, Club Fantasies down the street. It's just...
Which is a strip club at the end of the street. I always think it's funny that there's, we have farmers markets and, people pushing strollers, and then literally at the end of the street is a strip club.
Absolutely. And it's
and, an industrial, barren place.
Yeah.
It's outside of this.
It's part of the neighborhood. And anytime we, have an event or, we have a community of, everyone gets on a podcast or a Zoom call and they're like, all right, what do we want to do for this block party? I'm like, has anyone talked to Fantasies yet? Because they're a part of the neighborhood, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people go in there that are probably can make some moves in Providence. You know what I mean? There might be some suits in there that, have a say in certain government matters, if you know what I mean. Anyway, so Farm Fresh is this fucking awesome company that didn't always have a brick and mortar. They have this kind of online ordering service called Market Mobile that kind of really gears itself towards low-income families that can kind of set up a food delivery and pickup service for local farm fresh produce. We're talking about farms from down in Little Compton to Tiverton to, Smithfield all the way to, all over the state, everywhere. They take produce from everywhere. And basically bring it into this one distribution center. So we're in this massive building with huge hallways that basically doesn't function as you don't go there just to walk the hallways, and it's not like a Faneuil Hall or anything like that. But besides its distribution center, think of like a warehouse distribution center with huge kind of hallways and an open kind of, market feel, but with also scattered local businesses throughout. So there's us on the corner, Tallulah's Taqueria, which is, a huge, kind of Chicano Mexican taqueria that has a following on Ives Street on the east side. They have a spot in Jamestown.
You have Providence Brewing Company of the hot sauce.
Yep. Red's hot sauce. You have Anchor Toffee.
And then you got, I think, Wright's Dairy Farm.
Wright's Dairy Farm has opened up a scoop shop. They're going to do ice cream. They will sell their milk and their pastry items. You also have Robin Hollow, which is a great kind of florist based out in the South County area. So a lot of just really awesome companies that are doing their thing. And it's a space that on the weekends is just ripe for markets. Farmers markets.
So you're probably getting a lot more foot traffic than you ever did at
to say that our cafe business is doing leaps better than it did at the arcade is an understatement. Our margins are through the roof as far as, And
then you also got ISCO, which is in a separate physical facility on the same street, and then Revival, a separate physical facility. But and I've actually done this before. You can spend an entire day and or night here, depending on the time you come through.
And that's what was attractive to us as far as the bar scene. And that brings us back to our main point is that, all right, so we have this project going on at Farm Fresh. Let's just move coffee and spirits there. It's a huge space. We don't need the entire space for the roastery. Let's cut out a small section of it. Our section is probably a little bit bigger than arcade space, not so much.
It's about the same size from the bar, just the bar.
That's what I'm saying, the cafe standpoint. But we also have this great patio outside that we never had at the arcade. We have parking, a huge ass parking lot.
Whereas before you had no parking.
We had no parking downtown.
And now you have this. We're sitting in the coffee lab area, which is your training. And you don't have to be a barista. You can come down here and just learn latte art and everything. Which I think you can maybe have done before, but now it's it's separate from the bar area. There's literally a separate physical door that separates the two, and you could sit here and learn. And it's coffee lab and again, this is it's a multi-purpose, multi-use space.
And what's different and what makes our cafe different this time around is that you can look to your right through this giant bay window and see a roaster, a giant ass roaster.
And you can actually see the coffee being. You can't get any fresher than this. Literally, the coffee's being roasted 20 feet away from where they're serving it.
And still, we have those annoying questions. Customers come in and they're like, "Can I have a bag that's not been roasted 3 days ago?" It's like, what do you want? Do you want to literally put your hands underneath the roaster? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, all right, so we can't do that. FDA,
I would say make a separate roaster and just give it to those people and but charge they call it the coffee class experience.
Yeah.
You charge
$1,000.
Yeah, charge $1,000.
You can put your hand, right.
Yeah, you can literally sniff the coffee beans, do whatever you want.
Yeah.
We're going to charge you $1,000. It's not going to be served to the general public. It's a sealed off area.
Right.
And just charge them a ridiculous amount.
So you look to the right, you see the roaster. You look to your left, we have this giant glass garage door that anytime you walk in, they're like, oh, what happens in there? And all of our cafe attendants are knows what to, they're basically direct you to newharvestcoffee.com. There's a list of classes on there. Britta Gustafson, she's our head educational department teacher. And she, we teach anything from, seed to cup, which is the travel of where it comes from the coffee farm to your cup of coffee. We teach, barista basics. She teaches a class, which I think is one of the best ones out there is what you're fucking looking for at a grocery store when you walk up to a bag of coffee. What are the bullet points? What are the words on the bag and what am I looking for? You know what I mean? So just to the consumer, to the everyday coffee buyer, that's huge. It's we're not educating you on just our coffee. We're trying to educate the people to coffee in general, because
you can get good grind, you can get a good coffee grinder here, a good one that's not chopping it up, and a good type of brewer.
Or what kind of brewer do you have at home? How do you want it ground?
How do you want this ground? How do you want this roasted? How should you grind it yourself?
And that's already translated, and we can't. That's translated so much. I can't even tell you how many people come into the cafe now and, oh, do you need this ground? No, I have a grinder at home. It's fantastic. That's the amount of education that people have to coffee now is huge. And you can see that directly in the consumer. So you look to your right, you have the roaster. You look to your left, you have the education department. And then you have this beautiful cafe that doubles as a bar, and it's got a patio. It's got plenty of parking. That's on a street that's got street. It's got live music. We have markets on the weekends. I mean, it was a no-brainer decision that, we're about to hit year one, June 25th. And, Jason just looked behind him because we just got mood lighting for the bar, so it's not that we transition to a bar at a certain time. The moment we open, we can serve you a cocktail. It's there's a weird gray area of
5 o'clock somewhere.
Exactly. Yeah. I love that meme that it's 4 a.m. in Sydney time, it's someone doing something crazy, because people are insane at cafes in Sydney, Australia. It's, so from the arcade to here, the arcade was just, I don't want to boil it all down to an experiment. That's not necessarily, we were really trying to make it work there. We were. But just being here now, it's night and day.
I think I'm going to retitle this. I had a title in mind for the episode. I think I'm going to make the new title of the episode as we're having this conversation, because I think this is why I like doing this, because I think it's going to go one way, and I think the guest is going to go one way, and then it goes a different way. I think I'm going to retitle it. I had a title in mind in my head, but I think I'm going to retitle it From Experiment to Flagship.
There it is.
Because I really think that's the story we're telling right now. Sometimes that, when that works, though, it's like you said, when it fires on all cylinders, and it makes perfect sense, but then somebody on the outside looking in, it's oh, this makes perfect sense. Like you said, coffee and whiskey bar, why are we not there right now?
No brainer.
But then you got to educate other people and do certain things. And so here it leads to my next question. So do you think that this thing was an experiment at its time, and it's become the flagship? It's become the norm, right? Do you think that that's going to be? How should I put this? Do you think that this thing that was an experiment that became the norm, this idea of coffee whiskey bar, which even like you said, your dad still doesn't understand it, but some people may still don't get it. Do you think in the future, now, it's going to become the norm, or almost become not even a nice to have, you're going to have to do that, no matter what, whether it's you're doing a retail business, you're going to have to do more than one thing or be more than one thing. So I even talk with other creatives and entrepreneurs where it's you got to be able to wear multiple hats. Whether if you're working in tech, if you specialize in one thing and that goes the wayside, you're going to be in trouble. If you're a creative, you have to maybe be multidisciplinary. Do you think that that's translating into spaces now where it's hey, New Harvest, it's not just cafe, it's not just coffee, it's coffee and whiskey. Even New Harvest, the business, which I didn't realize, it's not just, hey, we're a roaster. We're a roaster. We have our flagship cafe. we also do this end-to-end coffee business where if you want to, serve our coffee, like we'll train your baristas up, that kind of thing. I'll give another example since we're on Sims Avenue. Like for me, this is just my personal opinion. We're near Revival. I'll use this as an example. To me, I think the reason why Revival is as great as it is that they serve beer. It's a damn good beer. They started out as a brewery. But I think now it's more about the experience at Revival. Mm-hmm. Like you're going there, it can be, on any given night they can have comedy shows. It can feel like a nightclub because they have certain DJs that are in there that are amazing. I've interviewed some of them. Sega Gen episode, Jabron PVD episode. Got to keep plugging these other episodes so people go listen. It's not just they went from, hey, we have this brewery to, hey, we have this brewery in like a food location, then almost kind of similar parallels to New Harvest, right? It was food, then brewery, then COVID happens. Hey, we have this opportunity for a bigger and better space. Now it's an experiential thing. Mm-hmm. Now we're doing, Lost Valley Pizza. Now we're doing these nightclub nights, and we have this backyard space where we can do these other things. And I feel like New Harvest is the same way. First it was just strictly the coffee business, then the coffee whiskey bar, then things, COVID happens. Now we got farmers markets, and like now like we can even, it's maybe not so much extensive on the whiskey, but now it's like it's a cocktail space and the coffee lab to teach people and the roaster and like this multi-headed thing that is a company. Do you think that that's going to become the norm rather than the exception, whether it's now or in like the next couple of years, where like you're going to have to focus on the experience and not just doing this one thing? Like, hey, we're just a coffee shop. Yeah, but what's the experience like at your coffee shop?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I think, look, I'm no business major. I'm still learning a lot of this on the fly, but I love doing that. I think there's two words. There's accessibility and adaptability that are crucial here. I think the first one's accessibility. I mean, who's your target audience? And beyond that, beyond your target audience, who are you going to hit just, the passer? Who's your ether audience? Who's your secondary audience? And beyond that, your third, your fourth. The biggest challenge for me was I didn't realize how much social media was a part of, any business. And now, if you don't have a social media game in whatever you're doing, I don't care if you're a cafe, I don't care if you're a bar, I don't care if you're a donut shop or an automotive place. If you don't have a social media game, then not a lot of people are realizing who you are and why you are.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's for me, I have a sticky note on my desk. Have you posted anything today?
Yeah.
That is just right in my face constantly, because I don't care what it is. If you're not, I have off weeks. This week, for instance, I just tired and, I didn't put anything out. But like, if you're not putting out anything, every other day, then you're not being accessible to a crowd, to a city that you might not know as your target audience, but that can bring other people in.
Right.
For us on Sims Avenue in the Valley, I'm pushing, and this time around, I really want to not only make our target audience a bar, or a cafe crowd, but also just a neighborhood place that people can come to. You know what I mean? A neighborhood.
Part of the neighborhood.
Right.
You feel like part of the neighborhood.
Because there's such a diverse neighborhood here in the Valley and North Providence and Olneyville that unfortunately, has been kicked around for a long time, and they deserve nice things too. I mean, that's what Farm Fresh is doing. They're trying to be accessible to as many people as possible.
Right.
That's what we want to be. And then adaptability is the second thing. You got to be able to, once you're accessing those people, you got to be able to adapt to what their needs are, to what they want. And that's a learning curve for me. I mean, but that's part of the business as far as what we talk about, the flagship, we're the people facing part of the industry in our trunk of the tree, right? The roastery doesn't deal with people like in the way we do. The education does to a degree, but we're seeing a volume of people that is constant. You know what I mean?
Would you maybe add willingness to experiment or take chances to that?
Because, absolutely.
Like, full disclosure, the coffee and like whiskey, or the coffee and bar thing, like that's becoming a little bit more of a norm. Like, I'll mention another spot that serves like coffee and I want to say spirits, but beer, Bolt,
Yeah.
right? And Bolt's amazing.
Right.
But one thing I will say about here that's unique, and the only other time I saw it was in Las Vegas, which inspired me to do one of the other things I do, which is Double Shot Sunday, streaming show about coffee and music. But I came to you, and full disclosure, like I've DJ'd here, and this is why another reason why we knew each other, because I was going to the old location and just seen you around. Just the fact that like a cafe/bar has live music, and it's not just and I'm not hating on this because like I have a friend, Dave Alves, episode 1. You should go check that out.
There you go.
Who does like the singer-songwriter, like acoustic thing. Like I think that's like when people think of like music in a coffee shop, there's that stereotype in their head. And like you guys have that. We have full bands. You'll have me DJing. Yeah. Like that's not a norm. So like the fact that I had a 5-piece
jazz set the other day.
Yeah, like the willingness to experiment. Would you add that? Because I don't think every business sometimes wants to do that, but it's like unless you're willing to do that, then you may not find the thing that can make you even more money than what you did before. Coming full circle, going back to Pero Salato, like unfortunately, I don't think Pero Salato would, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, would ever like have a DJ on a certain night because for whatever, maybe there's legal reasons, like or ordinance reasons. Sure. But let's say that wasn't a factor. Because we've what we're doing and we're sticking with it and da da da.
Yeah, I mean that I think experiment like what we talked about before. Coffee and Spirits was an experiment. You know, and now it's a successful experiment that we're translating into a flagship location. And adaptability is huge. You got to be able to look. You got to swing and miss sometimes to hit a home run. You gotta
get your at bats
right. You gotta get what Wayne Gretzky said. I mean, there's that classic: you miss all the shots you don't take. It's. With this experiment this time around, I use experiment as like in this new kind of like coffee and spirits new with, spelled in the NU with the, double, kind of take 2 part. Yeah, I'm swinging at everything I can, because you got to have a multitude of, especially cafes aren't, we're not all like what the Friends Cafe. I forgot what it was called.
I was gonna say like the stereotype in the head, like everybody writing their novel, like that joke.
Sure, there's a place in the world for, and I hope they never die. Honestly, I hope there's a world where every cafe could survive, but that's not the case. You know what I mean? Like.
Wayne Gretzky and Ryan Zins both said it best. You miss all the shots you don't take. New Harvest as a business was already successful, and they didn't necessarily need to open a coffee and spirits bar. However, its founders knew the potential behind their experiment, and so did Ryan. The general public, not so much. We have the benefit of hindsight, but when New Harvest Coffee and Spirits opened, it took a lot of training, education, trial and error, and even a little bit of luck before it took off. Along the way, there were a multitude of reasons to stop the experiment. Reasons such as a lack of a parking lot, accessibility issues during the evening hours, and a little thing called COVID. But instead, the experiment continued and is now the public face of a multifaceted coffee company. So, experiment, take risks, take chances, shoot your shot. Best case scenario, you miss and you hopefully learn from the experience. Worst case scenario, you never take your shot and you live with regret.
Huge for Providence right now is that there's a very competitive coffee scene. I hope it continues to get more competitive. I mean, whether you're talking about Nitro Bar, whether you're talking about Bolt, whether you're talking about us, whether you're talking about Coffee Exchange,
Since we're on this tangent, like what is like, just if you want to go dive deeper, like what is your opinion on the coffee scene in Providence? How do you think it stands out? Because we were somewhat jokingly, but it's true. Like maybe not the restaurant, but in Providence, like you have to actually go search out a Dunkin' Donuts or a Starbucks, which in New England is any other city in New England, it's like almost like fucking unheard of. I think Providence is very unique in that sense.
And I think it speaks volume to Providence as a whole as far as, look, there's a reason why, we're called the Creative Capital.
Hence the name of the show, the Creative Capital Show.
But we're also known as one of the best food spots or beverage spots you can go to in the Northeast or the country. I mean, how many top 10 lists have we been on as far as travel and leisure or, time or food or, everything.
How many movie stars have dined here? How many Food Network stars have dined here? How many famous chefs have been here?
Everyone that visits Providence or we talk to at the cafe says the same thing. I was surprised by how accessible, how beautiful, and just how diverse the entire city is. You know, as far as what do you want to eat?
Yeah,
name a cuisine you want to eat.
I've taken friends out, you know, from New York City and like from different cities, and they're surprised that like the food is affordable, but it's at the level. It's like, oh, this night out for dinner would be like $400 where I'm from, or even the fact that like I can take friends out and go to like I could throw a rock and hit a good cafe or hit a good cocktail bar.
So what's huge for us right now is that, you know, we were surrounded by residences in downtown to a degree. Unfortunately, downtown charges an arm and a leg, almost like Boston prices, obscene prices.
It's getting to that point, yeah.
Where like half the apartment buildings are empty.
Yep.
Here in the valley, we have the rubber mill lofts, and a bunch of others right around us that are just natural. Just people need coffee, right? You know, they only had Dunkin' Donuts on the end, you know, over by the IHOP down the road there. But every time that people come in, they're like, "I'm so glad you're here," or like, "I haven't had coffee this good since like." You know, some people coming from San Francisco, other people coming from across the sea, like Great Britain, or even Australia, or even like Seattle, or just the West Coast, or Austin, or you know, New York City, Boston. You know, people say they recognize our efforts and other efforts as far as the cafe or coffee scene here in Providence, and it's huge.
And does it surprise them when they're like, "Oh, you guys also serve cocktails here?"
Oh yeah,
like equally as good. Like, and it's on par, you know.
So here. I'll speak frankly here. Like I know spirits in the bar scene way better than I do coffee. I've worked in both for years. That's all I know.
I was going to say that's surprising since you were on CNN talking about the state of coffee in small.
Look, I can talk about anything, man. You asked me to talk about a fly, I'll talk your ear off about anything I want. No, it's not that I'm bullshitting. I know both. I'm more comfortable talking about spirits. Like that's just my wheelhouse. You know, that's a strike down the plate, and I'll hit it out of the park. But as far as coffee is concerned, you know, I'm learning too. You know, I'm not as fine tuned as like I can't dial in an espresso machine better than the next person. But I know the passion. I know about where coffee's coming from and what the farmers put into it. I know cost. I know like what it takes to run a cafe. I know about ordering. I know things like getting back ordered or like
beyond the trials and tribulations. Experience of the drink itself.
Exactly. And as far as management's concerned, like I know how to manage people. I know how a cafe should run. But so when people walk in, they're like, "Oh, you have a bar here." I love to hear it because I'm like, "Yeah, we function at. Oh, you're open till 10 p.m. Yeah, well, actually, we're a full bar. Where like I can talk to you about spirits. I can talk to you about cocktails. I can talk to you about beer. I can talk to you about so many other things that, and I try to educate my staff so that no matter who they talk to, you're getting the same answers across the board. I mean, so Britta,
consistency.
Yeah. Britta teaches cafe, coffee for classes. I've done spirit tastings before, but this time, so we're going into phase 2 of coffee and spirits, right? After June 25th, it's our year anniversary. Phase 2, I really want to I want to get both of us involved. So our new single origin coffee coming out is going to be from Mexico. It's going to be a limited run, and I really want to pair it with a mezcal tasting or like an agave tasting. Where Britta talks about the travel of our Mexican bean from Mexico to our cup of coffee, and I talk about the travel from the agave farm to your glass or your margarita. Bringing coffee and spirits together and really honing in on what we do as as a cafe.
Now you said the coffee scene was competitive, but it seems like a good competitive. It's like I don't hear at least maybe you know more than I do, which you probably do, but I don't hear trash talking between cafes or roasters or anything like that.
It does exist. The public might not hear it, but
it probably exists, but it doesn't seem to the point where from what I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, it doesn't seem like one cafe wants to see another one go out of business. We want to put them in the ground.
I say there's more unsaid than is said.
Okay. Are there similarities with the bar scene in Providence, or is it a major differences? What are some of the similarities or crossover you've seen between the coffee cafe businesses and the bar business? I can
confidently say that the bar scene in Providence is beautiful. I mean, it is a collective symbiotic thing that everyone wants each other to succeed. Everyone wants a busy bar scene in Providence is better for everyone. You know, it's going to ebb and flow from bar to bar.
Yeah.
You know, one bar is going to be busier. Not everyone's going to be scattered evenly throughout every bar. In a beautiful world, that'd be awesome. But like Nolan's can be jam packed, you know, and we might be slow or we might be busy, and you know, Isco's slow. Or the great thing about this neighborhood is the pinball effect you talked about. So it's like if they're busy, we're going to get spillover, which is huge. You know, that's kind of a big reason why we opened the place here. But the bar competition, I think in general in Providence is just like this weird, encouraging kind of like, not weird, like a beautiful, encouraging just animal. You know, whether it's like passing around, you go to a bar and you're like, hey, I need a bottle of triple sec. Like, we're out. Yeah, they're like, yeah, no problem, man. Like, you know, or like, hey, we're at a Bar Strauss today. Do you have any extras? Yeah, sure.
And I've seen bartenders from like one bar be at another bar.
Because
like
we all work,
yeah.
You know, it's such a small city. We've all worked at every bar. We know every bar manager. There's no, and also to plug, you know, the Bartenders Guild is this worldwide, but national also. The USBG, United States Bartenders Guild, has its own chapter in Rhode Island. If you're a local bartender and you really want to learn everything you can about a bar, if you want to experience, you know, different bars, you go to events, whether it's a tasting, whether it's, you know, a cocktail class or whatever, go on this website. You have to pay certain dues a year. It's not expensive at all. And you get to experience these awesome things. You get to be involved in a club that, you know, is very awesome as far as a bartender standpoint is concerned, you know, and they post jobs all the time. If you're looking at, like, instead of going on Indeed or like Craigslist, you go on the USBG website and there's listings of different bars that are reputable bars that, you know, the USBG puts its stamp on. You can find, you know, listings for that as well. So I think the United States Bartenders Guild, the Rhode Island chapter, is just, you know, an awesome thing that Providence has that kind of just blends all these bars together and like kind of brings everyone together, because that's all we're about, community in the end, you know.
Does the coffee cafe scene, is it already at that same level as the bar scene, the way you just
I don't think so.
about?
I think it can learn a lot from the bar scene.
Okay, so I was gonna be like another question. Why do you, in your opinion, why do you think that is, and what do you think the coffee and cafe scene needs to do to get to the level of the bar scene?
I mean, the easy answer is that, I don't know, you put a cocktail in someone's hand, they become easier to talk to, right?
Okay,
it's liquid courage. So, so in general, I think people are more friendly at a bar just because you want to talk. You know, it's the nature of a bar. And then the nature of coffee is, you know, you're on edge, you're a little jittery, right? It's like,
I need to get the hell out of here.
Yeah, I'm on a purpose, or I'm working on a laptop and I don't want to talk to anyone. So it's our goal as a coffee and bar to kind of break that down. You know, I've had some people unfortunately say to me like, well, can you let us know when there's going to be like music here, because I'm trying to work? And I'm like, I tell them, I'm like, you can follow our Instagram. I post about, you know, programming all the time. You know, unfortunately our schedule changes all the time. Like, we have insane hours, you know, we're open all the time. So it's like, it's hard to kind of like really put together.
It's like the music's happening like during the day, Monday through Friday. It's like happening either like at night. It's like Thursday through Sunday.
So then I remind them we're a bar too. You know what I mean? Like, sorry, you know, if you didn't get your work done this first 6 hours you were here sitting on a tea that you paid for, you know, and didn't get anything else, like, I can't, you know.
Yeah.
We don't have a Wi-Fi cutoff. I'm not going to be that guy.
Yeah.
You know, you're welcome to stay the entire day here, but just don't complain to me when we start playing music. You know what I mean?
Funny enough, I had one person complain. I don't think they were working. They were with their friends. But then I had somebody else who was working, and they were like, "Thank you for giving me a good soundtrack to work to." I'm like, "All right, it works both ways."
And that's the other thing. Like, look, that's the nature of the beast. You're not going to satisfy everyone, you know. And if I've learned one thing in my 32 years in life, is that you can't be friends with everyone. You can't satisfy everyone. You know, if we talked about, you talked about adaptability, accessibility, experimenting in your cafe space, ultimately do what you're going to do. You know, you know what you want and push that as much as you can. But don't compromise. You know, there's compromises, but also know what you're worth and know what you're trying to go for. And don't let people kind of criticize that.
So you said earlier, you know, besides spirits, there's one other thing, you know, and that's how to manage.
Yeah. How
did you become the manager of this? Because was that from the transition of the downtown location? Because you said that you weren't the manager at the time, and you weren't necessarily like mad that you didn't get the manager. Was that from the transition to this new spot, and it was like, hey, Ryan, like, you're the guy who knows it? Like, how did that happen?
So it was right along the time where, you know, I wanted to push myself and ask for that management position in Newport. because Ben had left the company at Coffee and Spirits, and he had basically said to Rick, the owner, you don't need to look for anyone else. I think you should hire Ryan. He's learned as much as I've been able to teach him. He wants it. I can see that he, has the drive for it. And if there's anyone you're going to leave the gig to, I think it should be him. So he basically told me, like, it's yours if you want it. So that's when I came up. I'm like, well, I kind of want the Pero gig too. So like, let me first put myself out there and see if I get that. And it's not like I didn't not want the Coffee and Spirits job, but like I thought I had, my style of bartending was more, I think, meant for Pero in Newport at the time. I was kind of scared to take on this new experiment, this kind of like weird, like enigma of like, are we a coffee shop? Are we a bar? Are we,
and you got to know the history of, funny enough, like the history thing, you got to know the history of like all these different spirits and coffee.
I was fascinated on that too, but I kind of wanted to translate what I learned from Ben and kind of take it somewhere else, to be honest. But, I couldn't be happier with what the job I took. Like we have the benefit of hindsight, right? We said before in the podcast. I can't imagine my life if I stayed in Newport, and I don't think it'd be good, to be honest. I mean, I think I would have spiraled that. I probably would eventually move there, and I probably would have fell down this fucking, rabbit hole of just shit. And I'm so glad that I took this Coffee and Spirits job, because the arcade, the first 2 years that I managed in the arcade before the pandemic was tough, to be honest. Like I wasn't getting paid what I should have been. There wasn't really recognition of what we were doing. We were still kind of that weird, like, what are we? What are you doing?
You're the special project in terms of like the company's eyes. Okay.
And we weren't like, it didn't seem like a real thing. And Rick knew that too. Like he in meetings, and this is why I'm not trying to shit on him by any means. Like we have had meetings since then, and I've said, I'm going to do much better than the arcade. He goes, Ryan, I wasn't expecting anything at the arcade. Like I wasn't compensating you for what I was expecting. I wasn't like, he was the first one to tell me like, of course you didn't do as well. Like I didn't give you the tools to succeed, and he fully admits that. And it's like, now it's like, all right, now we're in the same building. We're in the same project. We're doing like, he's 2 feet away from me in my desk. I can pop in anytime and be like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think about this?
Those lines of communication are there as well, which is probably different.
Huge. I can't even explain to you how, like, I never feel like he's never been the boss to, like, you kind of have to get it at him like, hey, am I doing a good job? Because he kind of just lets you go, which is great. But at the same time, I need like, all right, we got to meet once a month and be like, what am I doing here?
Yeah, like what's the next?
Are you happy? Are you not happy?
Yeah, what am I doing right? What am I doing wrong?
Right.
How do I improve?
Yeah, because I want to improve, and I need
the feedback.
I need criticism. I do,
So that actually, I think, this leads me into question, because I think there's so many different definitions of it. So it's a 2-part question. Do you think manager and leader is the same thing, or they be considered the same thing? Because I think sometimes they're not, and to me that's odd, but I want to get your personal opinion on it. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is, in your opinion, regardless of the industry or like the company you're working for, what does a manager actually do? Sure.
Management and leader. I think you can't be a manager unless you're a leader. Like I've experienced both sides of the coin. I've had a manager that just is totally by the book and just, it's no fun, no frills. And I respect that in a degree where it's like, all right, I know what's expected of me. I know what I have to do. I know I might not be getting paid for what I think I should be getting paid for, but I know what's expected of me at least. There's no like shying away from that. But also, like, I've been with leaders that have led me in a way that's just, they're there every step of the way, and they're just like, they're showing you by leadership. They're showing you by example, basically. Like, they're doing everything that, so you want to be a better person, not just because they're the manager, because they're leading you in a certain way that you don't want to fail, because they're doing all the same things that you're doing. And that's what I try to do. Like, I've been a leader, whether I like it or not, throughout my whole life, whether it's like friendship groups or whether it's been like, I don't know, hell, in a Bible study that I've been in, back in my, Christian days or whatever. Like the leader, to me, my mom's always taught me to lead someone is just to be a better person and to just do by example. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I'm not gonna expect anyone to do anything in my cafe that I haven't done myself. I'm sweeping the floors. I'm like cleaning out the trash. I'm taking, I'm doing everything that a manager should, in my opinion. There's no like hierarchy of, I'm going to sit at my desk for 8 hours a day and not check in or not do, anything that you don't see me doing. You know what I mean? But I think it's a fine line. Like it's, you got to know the balance between, I don't want to say you can't be friends with them either. Like you can't, like it's a situation where you have to lead and you have to manage. Leading them isn't just it's not going to be a situation where you're just like, all right, I'm going to let you do whatever you're doing, and just kind of like let it fall by the wayside a little bit. You got to know how to manage too. You got to know how to manage people and know what's expected of them and rule, but like rule with a very even fist and rule with like a very kind of like tempered kind of like attitude. Be receptive to what people are asking. And that's my biggest part. I mean, I try to put out a staff, basically a check-in every Tuesday when I do the schedule. We use this app called 7 Shifts, and I put out a list of like, all right, here where we're at. Like, here's the schedule. Let me know what's going on. All right, there's a lot of requested days off. All right, here's the new beer we have on tap. Here's a new whiskey we have in. This is great in this cocktail, blah, blah, blah. The dishwasher's broken. I know it is. Blah, blah, blah. We have new cafe specials coming out. Like, what do you guys think about all this? I try to make it like a very
open,
communal, open, just conversation. But at the same time, I want to make sure that it's a very delicate balance, because you want to be open, but you don't want to be too open, where it's like now you're just like.
I want to go back to that balance part in a moment, because one thing I've noticed about here, and it's funny from the social media posts and even just talking to you and from DJing here and then from being a customer here and just the vibe of the place and speaking with like the workers, the people working here like behind the bar and things like that, is that you and the business by extension appreciate your customers, the growers you work with, the cafes you work with, you appreciate the employees. At least it's, like outsider looking at it, it seems like it, right? Mm-hmm. Is that the cult? Like, is that? I'm gonna assume it's both. I'm gonna assume that's both you personally and the culture of New Harvest. But like, how has maybe the two influence? Like, how did New Harvest influence you on how to appreciate people and the people you work with? And then, do you think you had an effect on how New Harvest like looks at that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think it's totally hand in hand. I mean, I've learned. It's a trickle down effect. I'm appreciated by my boss, and because I lead the same way. You know what I mean? And it's what's fascinating about the company is that he's not just he's a very proactive boss in a way that like he's seen all the time. So it's not only do my employees know that I'm the cafe manager, but they also know that the boss is very approachable as well. Our office is one office. They can talk to both of us at the same time. They know there's a hierarchy of power, but it's not like
not like you can't like oh, this person's untouchable. Yeah. Like when all the bosses are
approachability is huge. I mean, it's transparency too. I mean, it's the transparency of this company is what kind of just gives me the ability to breathe freely and kind of know that I know what's expected of me, but at the same time, there's room for me to kind of do what I need to do. And my employees, I think, feel the same way. And it's kind of a beautiful symbiosis of just a general just understanding of what work needs to be done, what collective goal do we want to reach, and how can we get there.
So going back to that part about balance, I'm going to preface this question from, it's not a direct quote, it's like a general, I'm going to paraphrase it, from entrepreneur Gary Vaynerchuk, where I thought it was hilarious the way he puts it, but it makes a lot of sense. He's like, hey, I talk to all these like entrepreneurs, business owners, owner operators, where they go, Gary, why aren't my employees working as hard as me? And he's like, well, you shouldn't expect them to work as hard as you. And they're like, what? Why? And they're like, are you paying them the same? They're like, no. So he's like, so you expect the entry-level person to work as hard as you, the CEO, the owner, the operator, who's making like X amount more pay than them, but you want to want them to work as hard as you. Like, why do you feel entitled to expect that? Just because they're working for you, like, oh, they should just be happy. Like, they should work hard, but work hard to up to what you're paying them. If you're expecting them to do the exact same thing you're doing and they don't own the company, then like you can't expect that. The reason why I preface that, because first I think it's hilarious, like that, like no one's ever put it that way before, but it makes total sense.
Total sense.
Do you think now, and maybe this should have been happening all along, but now in the times that we're in, post-COVID world, great resignation, right? And I'll give you another example before I ask the question. One pizza place that was new that opened up, won't say the name. I didn't even bother trying them because I walked by, I was like, nope. But the owner of that place, as they were about to open, was on local news. Okay, and you know, maybe if people can put two together, they can figure out who the hell it is.
Sure.
Complaining, nobody wants to work. Nobody wants to work. Nobody wants to do this, and you know, and complain. I can't find anybody. They did eventually open, so they must have found somebody.
Yeah, must have.
But to then, you know, the complete, in my opinion, 180. Shout outs to the guys at Pizza Marvin, you know, or even Lost Valley Pizza, or even Nice Slice, or even you know, I want to say or even because all these places are great. Pizza J, Figadini. Someone can correct me. Doesn't seem like they're hurting for people to work at those places,
right?
You know, doesn't seem like, I don't see Pizza Marvin hurting for people to work there. I don't see Figadini hurting for people to work there. I don't see Nice Slice hurting for people. I don't see Pizza J hurting for people. I don't see Lost Valley Pizza hurting for people, right? Those businesses seem to, you know, from their attitudes towards the people that work for them seem to be a lot different than this other guy who's, you know...
Right.
You know, that's the only clues I'll give.
Sure.
Reason why I say all that. Do you think expectations of owners, operators, CEOs, and managers have changed or needed to have changed? Maybe it was a long time coming, like this all happened, like where the expectations of that and like how people work is different? Or do you think that maybe just certain managers, certain owners, operators just don't have the knowledge of, I don't want to say EQ, because then it's like, oh, emotional intelligence, I'm not going to get into that freaking debate, but the idea of like the ability to read people and have empathy. Because I don't think empathy is a skill that necessarily gets talked about when it comes to management and in business and leadership, but it really should be, because I think you have to have empathy with your employees.
I think you nailed it. I think that's the word I was going to say is empathy, because empathy is not weakness.
I think that's the other thing too. Like people are like, oh, like, yeah, you can't be nice. People walk over them, like, but it's empathy. It's just being able to like empathize with people. It's not a weak thing. That's just being able to relate.
Mm-hmm. And it's, when I first started, I let a lot of things just walk all over me. You know, you learn a lot. You know, I think anyone starting a business or managing for the first time, you know, will realize this. They'll either go way too hard and make everyone hate them, or they'll go way too low or like, you know, easy and let everyone walk all over them.
It's like an all or nothing on either extreme.
And I think when someone's first starting, like whatever part of the spectrum you're on, if you land somewhere in the middle, you're doing it right. You know, like you gotta empathize with employees. You gotta give them time off. You gotta like, I think I've denied one schedule request off, and it's who's making up the slack. It's me. You know, like does my partner not hate it? Yeah. You know, like but she understands that what my role is in this job. She understands who I am as a person. She understands my empathy. She understands that the buck stops with me. And ultimately, if I want this cafe to succeed, it's going to fall, or it's going to either succeed or die on my hands. You know, so like if you got to empathize with it, you can't burn people out. I have a small staff. I need to keep numbers down because it's our first year. I would love to bring other staff on, but I also want to give the workers I have 35, 36 hours a week, you know, whatever, 40 hours if they can do it. You know what I mean? I'll schedule them the full load if they want it. You know, that keeps labor hours low. That keeps, you know, that keeps my, you know, everything. And especially if they need time off, you gotta let them go because they need to breathe. And that's what Rick tells me too. Like I said before we even started the conversation, I took today off because he's like, you got to get out of here. If you spend, I can't have you being burnt out in the first 8 months we've been open because, he's like,
it's not gonna
because I know he
term.
doesn't want to lose me. He said for the first time, like, I've never seen my boss so bored in my life. He finally is a situation where he's like, he's hired the exact right people that he needs to actually be a CEO of the company, where he can like focus on outreach and like focus
on growing the business and innovative ideas rather than just keeping the lights on.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which is a lot of businesses never even get to that point. And if you can, you're lucky.
I know.
And it's like, okay, what are you going to do now?
And now he has the autonomy to kind of make decisions like that. And it's huge. And like today, I was just like, all right, I'll work in my garden on a beautiful day and I'll come in for a podcast. Like I'm willing to do that.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, right. It's whatever. No, I mean, this is a beautiful ending to my day off. But it's another weekend, starting tomorrow. We have a Friday night flea. We have this farmer's market on Saturday. We have the Providence flea on Sunday. So it's like back into business. I love what I'm doing. I love my employees and I try to give them as much autonomy as I can. I realize, look, I have a lot of employees that are over 25, low 30s, probably not what they're going to be doing the rest of their lives. I recognize that. But I also appreciate them and I want to show them and I want to pay them competitively. I want to make sure they know that they're recognized because I don't want a bunch of high schoolers working for me. Like, I need 18-year-olds because we're serving alcohol, but like,
I was gonna say that might be an issue.
But like, at the same time, like, there's something to be said. I love teaching someone new that comes in that has cafe knowledge but not a lot of bar knowledge, or bar knowledge doesn't have a lot of cafe knowledge. I can work with that. A fresh slate is something unique. I haven't worked with that too much, but it's a challenge, and I'm willing to see that head on.
So besides like just from like a numbers perspective and accounting perspective, when do you realize you either need to hire or scale up or add a new part to the business or try something new? Like when, because I think that's like something that a lot of business owner operators, managers, they make the mistake of like, this thing's doing gangbusters, let's scale it to the freaking moon. And then the business fails because it's scaled up too quickly or they didn't take that into consideration. So, how do you and or New Harvest as a business recognize, hey, we need to hire people, hey, we need to scale this, we need to add this new program, we need to improve on this or expand this or get into a new restaurant, get into a new territory, etc.?
I think it's having a blueprint of, so right now I have a 3-year plan that Rick and I've outlined. Year 1 at Farm Fresh, year 2, year 3, what are you expecting? So you gotta know what you're expecting. You gotta, in a new year of a business, you set a number out there. You kind of have to, as a ballpark number. So we kind of use the arcade. We're like, all right, this is what we made at the arcade for a year. Profit. You look at our P&L sheets. We translate those into like, all right, we recognize that things are different. Parking, local businesses around us, things like that. We can probably increase those numbers a little bit, but we have to keep it realistic. You know what I mean? So expectations, right? Know what your expectations are. See where you have a 3-year or like at least a year out plan. And if you succeed, fucking great. But at the same time, you can't blame yourself if you fail either. You got to understand what your expectations are. That's step 1. Step 2 is volume. If you're exceeding your expectations, then you can, all right, now we can talk about hiring someone new because, you can't have the manager working on the floor 6 days a week.
Right.
Because my job is to focus on how I can grow this business in certain ways that I can't really think about if I'm, ringing someone out all the time. I'm happy to do it. That's ultimately where I came from. I was born from that. I know how to do it, and I'll do it anytime I'm needed. But ultimately, I need to be free to see the business from a 360 point of view and how I can grow it, whether it's DJs or whether it's
Bands,
education,
trios, education
classes.
Or
like branching out, like doing events in the hallways, doing there's so many things that I'm just scratching the surface on that we can
the mezcal and coffee tasting together and going into history and
exactly
doing that.
So that's step 2 is knowing what the volume is. Like today I got an email from him because our morning business is getting busier and busier. So normally we'd have someone come in at 7, open for 8, and then they're alone till 9. And then, there's 2 people on the floor till 3, whatever. The opener now is opening at 8 and they have a line out the door, so it's like, all right, now where can we shift? What can we work with what we have first? Let's recognize the
recalibrate and balance.
Let's recalibrate, especially in our first year where we don't have a lot of playroom from like monetarily, you know what I mean? How can we play with hours as far as what we have for a staff? Does that mean opening an hour earlier and bringing in the mid earlier, so that they're here? Or like, you know what I mean, bringing in the mid right when someone opens. Does that mean closing a little earlier? But with each decision, there's ripple effects, right? Like I don't want to. My biggest thing is, and what I appreciate with anyone that opens a business is consistency, especially in hours. I want to be open for the hours we're open, so people can. I don't care if you're slow. We're open till 10, and we're going to stay open till 10. We're not going to be like, oh, tonight's slow, let's close at 9. No, like. What if we have construction workers that are working on the I-95 north or south bridge right now that come in here at like 9 p.m.
And when that consistency goes off the rails, then it's like people stop going to that business because they're like, I never know when you guys are open.
And it's not like that they hate you. That's not. They're just like.
But it's just like, all right, I'm going to go to somebody that is because at least I know they'll be open.
So like it's a catch-22 because you want to like, all right, so let's bring in someone. Let's work with the staff that we have. Let's bring in someone earlier. And then, all right, so we're closing at 9 now. Like in the first year, we're already shifting hours. I don't want to do that. You know what I mean? Like if we're just open till 10, we're closed on Mondays. People know that. Tuesday through Sunday, though, we're open till when we say we're open. And like I want to stick to that. So it's like it's twofolded of working with what you have, and then hopefully when you reach a volume big enough, you can add someone else and you can expand hours.
Now, would you say that process is the same, or is there differences when it comes to not growth and knowing when to scale, but knowing when to take I'll put a preface to this, a calculated risk?
Yeah.
Like how to recognize a calculated risk and and knowing when to take that calculated risk. Like how do you approach that? Is it the same process as what you just said, or is
trial and error?
Okay.
That's it's honestly just like throwing things at a fan and seeing if it sticks. It's just I don't know. I mean, my boss wouldn't have put me in this position if he didn't know. Like, experience is huge. Like that's my biggest attribute to management. Is that I've experienced most of it and I've worked through most of it. So I know with most situations, like I talk to my older brother all the time, and he's like, "Dude, you're doing a great job." And he's like, I'm like, sometimes I feel like I have no idea what I'm doing. I'd say like most days I feel very confident. I'd say like 3 days of the week, they're just like, I'm sitting at my desk and I'm being like, what the fuck am I doing? You know what I mean? And he's like, that's healthy. That's normal. He's like, the reasons why those other days are passed by seamlessly is because you know what you're doing. Everything is just clicking because it's experience, So like, that's how I take things like scheduling and management and, when do we hire someone? I kind of just, it's by feel. It's honestly by, it's knowing your employees, knowing your space, knowing your customer base, knowing your volume, just kind of being present as much as you can.
So,
and it's nuanced. I mean, every company is not going to be,
yeah, it's going to be different.
There's no blueprint, for this shit. Yeah.
With that being said, I think this leads into one of the last questions beautifully. So from this wealth of experience that you have, what advice would you give to the creative entrepreneur starting their own business, the current entrepreneur, the current owner-operator, the current manager? What advice would you give when it comes to managing and experimenting? Because I think that's been especially the experiment part, like knowing when to take that risk and experiment, and advice on management. Those two things. What advice would you give to any of those people, the entrepreneur, owner-operator, manager, etc.?
I'd say immerse yourself as much as you can. I don't care how silly it is. Involve whatever you're doing, throw yourself into it and let it consume you. And I don't want to say consume you in a way that it's like, all right, you don't have a social life anymore. You forget your friends. You don't call your mom. I'm not saying consume you in that way, but let like a plant that's starving for water. Let it nourish you. You know, like learn everything you can. Ask questions. That's another thing. Ask questions. No one's gonna. I mean, yeah, you might be that annoying guy that like or person that just is. But ultimately, you're going to be better for it. Yeah. You know, like you might be shoot off eventually, but they're like, "Oh man, that guy seems very interested." He clearly wants to know what's going on. He wants to be here for a purpose. So like,
I feel like it's way worse to like be a know-it-all and act like you know everything, and then you really know rather than be like, "Hey, I don't know this stuff. I want to know more."
That's what it is, and don't bullshit. I mean, there are times for bullshitting. I've gotten very far in life when the necessary bullshitting needs to happen. But also just know when you're wrong and know when you don't know what you're doing and ask. You know, just learn as much as possible from everyone. I mean, as far as just especially in management, you know, just be cognizant of that. You're in that position because your experience led you to that position. If you're in a management gig because, you know, you just came out of nowhere, good on you. It's probably going to be a lot harder than, you know, you think it is. Like, don't take it for granted. You know what I mean? But know your worth. You know you're there for a reason. Always take a minute to step aside and say, I know what I'm doing. You know what I mean? Recognize that. Then don't let others, you know, because that goes so far. I don't know how many times I've just had, you know, I have to take a walk around the building and just be like, all right, I needed to step away from the office for a minute. I needed fresh air. I needed to like recollect myself. I know what I'm doing. Was it a bad day? Sure. But tomorrow's a new day. Tackle it.
So with that, I think we're going to end on, I think it's a good way. I think it's a great way actually to end this episode. It went on, had one idea of a tangent in mind. I think we both did. And then it went on to a different completely
That's
tangent.
That's the beautiful thing about conversation.
Exactly. This is why I do this, because I think it's going to go one way, then it goes another way. And then after the fact, I get to listen back and be like, oh, now I get to like cut this up and craft it into a story. Because I think we crafted a story here about risk-taking and willing to experiment. And when the experiment becomes the flagship, that's going to be the name of the episode. Hold me to it when I put the episode
I will.
But what, you know, anything you want to, you know, I guess sign out on, anything you want to promote, anything you want to say, it's open floor. You can take all the minutes you want. It's open mic, hot take.
Sure.
Go for it.
First, I want to thank you, Jason. I mean, I think what you're doing is fantastic. And I mean, selfishly, I didn't know much about your podcast. You know, I knew that when I first started talking to you at the arcade, you know, I knew what type of person you are. I knew you were like in tech, and I knew you were like, you know, super talkative, and I knew you were just like this awesome guy that just was, you know, supported the business, and I couldn't thank you enough, and you continue to do so, and that's huge. But then I found out, I listened to your interview with Manya across the way, and I was just like, man, this guy's like, he's really doing it. You know, like I know it's not necessarily paying you all that much, but man,
if anybody wants to sponsor the show,
please do.
It's
man.
open
please,
season. I will hawk anything. Anything.
Seriously, this guy is he's trying his hardest tonight. Please sponsor him, please. As far as guys, just come out to Coffee and Spirits. I mean, if you haven't experienced New Harvest Coffee, I mean, shame on you, but because we're everywhere. But like, just come to Sims Avenue and experience this neighborhood. Mainly, I want you to come to our cafe, but I gotta plug everyone in this neighborhood, that whether it's Revival, Isco Spirits,
PVD Brewing Company,
Tallulah's, everyone. I mean,
Reds,
Farm Fresh. I mean, fuck, go to Fantasies, get a lap dance, come get a cold brew before you do. I mean, it's only going to help. I mean, yeah, look, all the dancers, they're great customers of ours.
Lattes and lap dances sound like a great
I'm telling
podcast.
You, that's a podcast, man. We want to grow the coffee education. We want to grow spirit education. And I'm there for all of it. Coffee and Spirits is going to be different this time around, and I can promise you that. We are just getting started. I mean, we're almost in year one, and the sky's the limit for us here. I appreciate everyone that has supported us throughout the years, especially in the old arcade. I mean, we still have loyal customers that come over from there. I learned a lot, and I'm still learning, and I appreciate it, you guys, and you, Jason, and everything this podcast is doing. So happy to be here, and get your ass out to 10 Sims Avenue. Oh, and follow us on coffeeandspirits.ri on Instagram, please. Thank you.
Which is different than the New Harvest Instagram.
Different than the New Harvest Instagram. Yeah, everyone gets confused on that. But coffeeandspirits.ri is our cafe and bar Instagram. You'll find out all your programming, whenever Jason's doing his set here, and everyone else, and just all of our weird specials and quirky takes, and so please follow us.
And with that, till next time, everybody.
Peace.
Keep on creating. And that's it for this episode of the Creative Capital Show. Thank you for listening, and a special thanks goes to this episode's guest, Ryan Zins. The Creative Capital Show is hosted, recorded, edited, mixed, and produced by me, Jason Sylvia. You can listen to the Creative Capital Show over at our website, creativecapitalshow.com. We're also available on Anchor FM, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and all other major podcast hosting platforms. If you like the show, please subscribe. Helps the show out a lot. And be sure to follow the show on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, LinkedIn, and YouTube. I hope you enjoyed the show, and until next time, keep on creating.